Hey, welcome to another March. Good to be in the sun, hit by the sun a little bit. Just did my laundry, did some cleaning, did some emails, phone calls. Still financially stressed. Grateful, thankful my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee. Auctioning everything that I'm wearing. Thank you to my anonymous friend for the backpack and those red gloves by which I'm challenging Donald Trump since 2018. Marching for the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the plumbers, the electricians, the welders, and all those involved in the production, distribution of food. All those daycare workers changing some diapers, the flight attendants. Is a big strike here in Canada, Montreal, N.A.C.W.P, and the sun setting. And now it's a beautiful day today. It's less hot than it was. Just gonna drop some garbage here. There we go. And then click it back and going towards the mountain as we go. Mount Royal, there's no snow. Still got a few days, actually a full month. Let's get for that full month, of course, of that good summer, you know. Always good to be a good summer and still a good month of it. And always got to begin commence with gratitude. I was a bit moody. MOD, but you know, on the stress side, and that's what it is with that, and that's how we gotta get drilling, and that's how we have to go on that appellation 24/7 for the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the grocery store clerks. Gotta cross the street only here. Prudence on the street. Turn your heads left and right, just like a robot. I call it do the robot, of course, you know, with Asperger's, you got those calculations, so sometimes, you know, the aspiness, we calculate how much time it takes us to traverse the street on the go, and that's what it is for the Rock&Roll, and that's what it is now, you know, 24/7 for the firefighters, butchers, electricians, plumbers, and the nurses, the doctors, and that's just an N.A.C.P trait, you know. The Aspies we calculate, of course, in dimensions. For example, when I'm about to cross the street, you know, that is a calculation that comes in mental. So, for example, I would calculate the speed of that street, the speed of that car, that is, comparison with the size of the street. Correction, the speed of the car. Of course, I see it a bit blurred because I was prescribed some glasses, but nonetheless, the size of the car, because it takes the size, the speed, of course, to calculate type of the velocity, for example, you know, how much it takes for me to cross from that side to that side. So these are, of course, mental calculations, which, of course, are endeavored to be, for example, that car that's coming there, it's going up at maybe 20-25 kilometers an hour, right? And it's a few yards distance, so the yards will be maybe 20 yards from here to that place. Well, this bike is going a bit on the fast side, right? So you have the yards, the distance, and then you have, of course, the speed of the car. So I will calculate how many steps I have to take and how fast, because the steps will be the same. But if I go faster, it would take less. So let's say I have 44 steps to take, 1, 2, 3, 4, but just like a number. It could be less or more. I'm just giving a number like that. It could be 40. Of course, if I take a third of a yard, a half a yard, whatever, they're like gridiron football, and then you calculate, of course, the appellation, you calculate that, and that is, of course, the calculation which pops into the mind. Of course, it's a mental, kind of an N.A.C.P characteristics, if you will, so that's how I always go when I'm on the roads. You know, when crossing the street, it pops into my brain a few, of course, it's estimations, a few calculations, and then I kind of decide whether it's safe to cross or not because of the car, right? The speed of the car and how fast it's coming and how fast should I go. So usually if I have to go fast, I put in 4 categories. If I have to run fast, just run. If I have to walk, or if I have to walk in a hurry, you know, because walking is like this, but although I'm more marching, right, than walking. So marching steps, running fast, or marching faster. Those are just 4 main categories. There could be 5, you know, depending on the speed. So that's, I guess that's a little bit of an N.A.C.P-ness for you. With this neurological mental divergent condition known as Asperger's, and we can be a little bit weird like that. So today marching for the firefighters, the butchers, the nurses, the doctors, the grocery store clerks, all involved in the production, distribution of food. Special North American Collective Workers Party Monday. I was a bit moody, but now I have that smile a little bit better today. Better now. I did my laundry, and it's just financial stress, to be honest. Just financial economic stress, which I have known, of course, the two Asperger's. Gonna put this here and make a little donation. So due to Asperger's, of course, which is not a mental illness, it is a neurological mental divergent condition. We have these three steps. You want some soup? There's some soup for the people. I still have food, but here, there you go. This is nice food here. Gonna take care of this beauty there. Somebody made some nice art. Always love some colorful arts if you can make them, and always check. Always grateful for the donation. Those who make the donations here, always appreciate it. Thank you. You know, takes a lot of arbeit, takes a lot of work, and I'm all about work in my independent way. My work in the past years, of course, has been around my special interest. You know, Aspies, we got special interest, and me is 24/7 rock and roll, sports and fitness. Dancing is my favorite sport. I am also androgynous, pansexual, pro-labor and love, universal, revolutionary, centrist, and who's financially stressed. I've been financially stressed, I guess, for years. You know, this neurological mental divergence known as Asperger's. Being that I'm part of the neurodivergent community, we have more difficulties in social interaction, social communications, the way we communicate. But of course, as priest SHNH, I can always serve, and due to past lives, incarnations, you know, sometimes I was born a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a woman, a man. You get that 50-50 now. Always the if you're 18 plus, every man's woman, every woman's man of the empire. For the empire, every man's woman, every woman's man of the empire. Coming empire, the 10, the 50, and the 3. For the N.A.C.W.P, for the North American Collective Workers Party. Let's salute the bus drivers, public transit workers, the butchers, the bakers, the cooks, construction workers now, who went on those toes and who went and did a little bit of those good buildings. And of course, those who are going to work that sanitation work. See, those are athletes in the NFL. You would know how much would you last doing that work. It would be like a sport. They're also athletes. Sanitation workers, please, NFL, NHL, and BMLB, give some tickets. Give some big tickets. And I'm a bit concerned. I was a bit alarmed that there was some further negotiation with the union, Air Canada Union Coupe, Canadian Union of Public Employees, that went into strike. And I'm a bit concerned that it deteriorated a bit, and I was thinking that there's going to be some solutions found, and I always love to see that, loving people holding hands there. That always gives me a little hope, because it's not all about the money. Money is to buy, sell, you know, and it's not all about the Wall Street. And somebody making some good love now, that gives me hope. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean, that's worth defending. And you know, you got this beautiful yellow, and we got my brothers and sisters there doing a little bit of that work. Arbeit. Gotta salute. And I waved them, he waved back a little bit of that, because imagine, all the work, they need a little bit of loving, and that's good work. And it takes them to build and to keep us clean here, all this clean. And I call for them to be given some tickets, you know, public to be tickets, and train tickets even, and plane ticket, not plane necessarily, because unless theirs, but I guess plane and train tickets to be given a little bit once in a while, you know. Don't be so selfish, man. As the public workers, everything that I do is a call for a public-private partnership, you know. Everything that I do is a call for a public-private partnership, and they're walking the other way. I see them holding hands also. So that's always gives me a little bit of hope, and I'm not looking for specifically. I'm going to propose again by September 11th, and I always like to, but me, you know, I'm not looking, it's open probably for me, friends with benefits only, but you know, I'm androgynous, pansexual, so get that 50-50. Don't will to waste nobody's time. Don't waste mine, you know. You want to be friends with benefits, you got to get on that 18 plus. So if you're 18 plus, we can rock and roll, gridiron, dancing, football, rainbow style living, and pledge your legions, and our family support the dream, the dancing goddess, and the dragon kingdom. And always putting these steps, always grateful, thankful, rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee. And when I get back home, it awaits me a little bit of that good sweets, having a little bit of that good sweets with it. And my anonymous friend, of course, cooked something good, and I got something good cooked at home, so that's always good. Some rice with some chicken leftovers from yesterday. You can see the little small video. So as I march now, as I encourage you all to work out, train, exercise, working out, training, exercising is so important. I've been on a fitness journey for a long time now. A long time, I guess 2017. I'm celebrating 8 years. Today, 8 years since I went on that trip. In August, September, summer 2017, I went coast to coast, ocean to ocean. I got those tickets, train tickets and bus tickets. Bus tickets and train tickets, I got both. And of course, I have been keeping them to give them for $1 million, auctioning them for $1 million. I'm just gonna circumvent and go on the other side. Don't leave a mess there. Because children can cut their fingers there, right? That's if children or youth can cut their fingers, and that's security matters right there. So don't leave that there, public hygiene, because if the kids play with that, they could cut their fingers there. So just a call. That's just a call from yours truly, citizen friendly call, public hygiene, and it's important, Sometimes we gotta make a mess. Sometimes we gotta make a mess, I guess. Sometimes we gotta make a mess. Sometimes I'm a mess myself. This morning after the Sabbath, it was quite messy. My room was a mess. I said, wow, what a mess. And then I put it orderly. I'm still auctioning a lot of things which I have, everything that I'm wearing now for $1 million each item. And that's a beautiful burgundy red. Got a Rock&Roll 24/7 for the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the truckers on the road now. Gotta be saluting, saying some of that good loving to the truckers on the road. How many trucks carrying bacon, eggs, milk? I don't know what's going on with Air Canada. I guess when I'm gonna come back tonight, I'm gonna see if they settled, if they agreed on further negotiation, or if there has been an understanding, because those 4 beautiful birds aligned. Maybe that's a good alignment, good omen. But for years and years and years, you check my videos, I've been doing workouts, training, dancing for, of course, priestess, and always ready to dance for the workers and collective bargaining and whatever it is. I'm calling all to the Global Dragon Union to create the Phoenix People's Party, aka the North American Collective Workers Party. This N.A.C.P. artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical, theoretical, honest, and theorist. It was not perfect, far from it. It was less moody than it was. I was a bit moody. I craved a massage therapy, and I said, you know what? I wish I could afford a massage therapy, but then I said, hey, who deserves it more? Those who pick up the garbage, the sanitation worker, and friends with benefits only. You don't want to waste your time, don't waste mine. We can get a little of that drill and that massage with it, and we can get on that massage, So that is just something which we do appellatively. And here we're going to turn a little bit to check a little bit of that garden. What's going on in the garden here is we got these beautiful flowers. So it's something which I have to appellate and always integrate all the points of the Concordium where I am now to admire the beautiful blue heavens. Rock&Roll 24/7 as I go. I got some scars, got some pain, got some changing of those lanes. I guess I'm on my 4th beginning in the past 11 years myself. So with Asperger's is more difficult, That's a mental divergent condition which puts me part of this small tiny fraction of the population. Aspies, we constitute less than 1%, less than 1%, less than half of a percent, less than 0.44%. Hey, look at these, and just beautiful. Especially these ones also, the red ones also, but look at those blue ones. They're just amazing, eh? Just amazing. You got a lot of flora, fauna here, and you can check out the big garden, huge garden. And that's part of the gardening procedures. I did myself some gardening, urban gardening. I did urban farming, So I have some experience farming at the micro level, but it's the same procedures. It's the same principles as the big farming. It's just it is at the more micro level, right? Smaller level lots, but I planted a few years ago. Urban farming, Montreal, Hawk Island of the Hawk. Montreal is surrounded by a big river, second most populated city in Montreal is the second most biggest populated city in Canada. So always drill on the go, and it was the first one until 2007. Until 2007, it was the biggest. Until 2007, it was the biggest. It kind of changed. So Montreal for a long time was the most populated city. For a long time, Montreal was the most populated city. But then it changed. It was Toronto now. It's Toronto. I think 2007, 2010, if I got my stats right, something about that. And I just love this beautiful garden here. See those beauties? They're so tall, and you got some pink and white. And my favorite color type is yellow, yellow, yellow. Although red, red, red is my favorite color, but I love that. I love that. Yeah, I love that. Yellow flowers I love, and I guess I could take a little turn as much as I want to get the most sun as I can is something which I gotta be on the go now, you know. So let me get a little bit in the sunshine. So we're heading towards the mountain. We're gonna take a little bit of I'm gonna say traditional route because it's the route most employed. So sometimes we go a little bit of the snake, switch it up, you know, in Montreal Island of the Hawk. Montreal, where we love that French and La Belle Province. So 24/7, you know, for years and years and years, and suffered struggle. Didn't even today. I was a bit moody, but then I got joyous, and thank goodness, goddess is always God bless, goddess kiss. Our empire, because like God, goddess, it both goddess, and don't know all the answers to the spiritual questions, but I have my own Thelemik spiritual knowledge, and I guess I always discover a little bit of spirituality as the sun shines and rises. My Publik King, the sun, you know, it's always important as we appellate all the dictums where we are in the civilizational manner, where we comport ourselves to be always as an individual sovereign citizen who lives with this neurological mental divergent condition known as Asperger's, and who's now in the public. So being that I'm now in the public, I myself have added on my individual sovereign citizenship, added responsibilities, duties, and obligations. I myself have added responsibilities, duties, and obligations which I would have not had were it not, of course, to be in the Concordia, to all the appellations in the factorials of where, of course, we have to be on all the things where we have to grow in the implemental to get love, of course, to get on the appellations where we have to get on the side of the street, just like driving, right? Stay on the right side, for example, and I'm somebody who doesn't like violence, you know? Somebody who doesn't like violence. I don't like violence, although I'm hyper vigilant. I live my own trauma, you know. I was attacked by surprise vicious. I survived a vicious. I survived a vicious surprise attack years ago. I don't know exactly when. Deadline passed already for me to go retrieve, but I said by September 11th I really have to go and retrieve the documents, see when that was, and exactly, you know, I've been in the process of changing my name for years, but gotta save a little dollar here, a little dollar there, because you know that currency money costs, and it enables us to do these little things. But of course, it's always something which I gotta fully acquiesce and say in all the manners that, yeah, I survived. I was viciously vicious. I survived a vicious surprise attack. Vicious surprise attack. Oh, I fell on the concrete, hit my head on the concrete. Montreal Metro. The Montreal Metro. Hit my head on in the Montreal Metro. And I was bloodied up, and I had dislocated right arm, right shoulder. I went to the Jewish General Hospital. I was kind of cracked back, snap back, replaced, crack. And yeah. And I survived that, and I know when that was. I was put on some meds for pain for that event, and I have trouble with my memory, you know. Retrograde amnesia, it's called, and I have trouble remembering my life prior to spring 2014. To spring 2014. So it remains a mystery. Sometimes it comes back, The memory comes back, and I have these flashes of surviving, living unspeakable deeds, and I am joyous, moody, financially stressed, but you know, on this freedom, and freedom is, of course, something which gotta be insured. You know, I got tatted up there, and I got tatted up there. You know, tatted up there, and I got it tatted up on there, here. Canada right there. Canada and freedom. We gotta ensure freedom, and that's what we have to get doing with that, insurance of freedom. And that's what we have to appellate on the conjugation of things where we are prudent on the side, of course, of all the implementations of the Trinity or theories, which of course we have, of course, to do in all our civilizational complexes where we are, to do in advertus, and that's something where I stand, that I do not like violence myself. I'm somebody who doesn't like violence. It's just I am hyper vigilant, I am hyper-vigilant, and this hyper-vigilance, of course, makes me hyper-vigilance. I live hyper-vigilantly, and I have lived for years, and, I am not perfect, far from it. I don't make pretense to be, but, of course, I also have my strengths, and, of course, my strengths and characteristics lie, of course, when I am, of course, involved in those special interests, and those special interests, also known as obsessive interest, are part of us Aspies, they're an integral part of our being, our daily ritual-like routines. Aspies, people with Asperger's, we have these ritualized routines, So anyways, I'm going to go before September 11th to retrieve the archives. I was curious if there's the archives. When was that? When did I go to the Jewish General Hospital all bloodied up, and after I was viciously attacked by surprise and hit my head on the concrete? Had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder, and that dislocated right arm, right shoulder, of course. I was put on some meds for pain, and I'm not sure exactly when. It's got a salute. Those who pick up the garbage. Super important in the sanitation of the cities, Sanitation of the city, we gotta get on that city sanitation. So that's always something important where we have to construe, and otherwise we'll be living, hygiene and disease, and sanitation is very important, It's gonna be part of our empire as well, and we're gonna cheer rock and roll for our sanitation workers daily. Oh, I don't know if I should take this. What is that? Is that 2-in-1? Oh, I guess it's lacking that, but I don't really need that. My anonymous friend now gave me a little practical one, and he pretty makes out good coffee. I just have to rinse it or wash it, so I don't need that. But if somebody needs there, and that's a little bit of rock and roll. So having viciously, of course, been attacked viciously, I was attacked viciously, surprise attacked, and remembered, of course, going to the Jewish General Hospital, but my memory before 2014, spring 2014 is, and on the blackout, but that's a long time ago now, because we're August 2025, so August 2025, let's say March, April 2014, March, April, that is, of course, March, April, May, June, July, August. So that's more than 11 years. More than 11 years and 4 months ago. More than 11 years and 4 months ago. So it's a long time. So my life prior to that, to spring 2014, remains a mystery. I remember in the news, because I've been doing geopolitics, and even before that time, supposedly geopolitics was my thing, because I got a letter of reference from when I graduated high school. Supposedly I wanted to go to Kingston Military College. I got a good reference from when I finished high school, last year of high school. I got a reference letter. I wanted to go to Kingston Military College, so that means that geopolitics was always part of my special interest as an N.A.C.P. And of course, Asperger's is not a mental illness. It is a neurological mental divergent condition. That's where we have to start and begin with Asperger's not being a mental illness, but a neurological mental divergent condition. So Asperger's, being an N.A.C.P., you're not somebody who's mentally ill or who has a disease. I am not a disease, and we just live with this neurodivergence. So yeah, but spring 2014 is a while ago. So I have a good memory of the past 7, 8, 9, 10 years, 11. And paradoxically, my memory comes in the news what I remember geopolitically, because of course with with retrograde amnesia, you lose personal memory of personal events in your life, but you don't lose mathematical knowledge, linguistic knowledge, and skills. So things of that nature, that knowledge is not affected at the brain area by the same. It's just memories. You lose memories of your youth, of your adolescence, stuff like that, stuff like that. Youth, adolescence, and that is just something which we have to do, which we have to do. And that's pretty much how I go. And if you want to be my family, we can be pledge your allegiance, support a dream, the empire to 10 to 50 to 63, which is fundamentally a call for a public-private partnership, and our friends will benefits only. Don't will to waste nobody's time. Don't waste my time. I won't waste yours, and we're not going to waste each other's time. Just friends with benefits. You're black, you're white, Want to do some loving, you're 18 plus of age, of course, adults consent. We can do that rock and roll. Got some of that good loving great iron, but I'm not looking necessarily. I'm not sexually frustrated. If I would be, I would discuss it, I guess I was, but I have a kind of watch what I say, age restricted, but I guess with South Park, sometimes you gotta get a little bit of that South Park. I just want to look that there's nobody around me, because that I can, if I discuss topics that are more R-rated, although I guess with kids listening to South Park these days, I don't listen to South Park. Sometimes it pops on my feed because there's relevancies with geopolitical events, but besides that, I don't listen to it. I just made a reference because it was in the news lately. I watched on both Canadian news and American news, and other news due to the cultural references with regards to the Trump administration. But besides that, I wouldn't mention. The important thing is, if you're a millionaire, billionaire, just give some charity as well. Do some acts of goodness and kindness, and charity is super important. Something values that I hold dear. And Aspies were often misunderstood as not having empathy or compassion, and it's exactly not that. It's just because Aspies, we show our compassion by action. So our compassion and empathy is action based. If you're in a position to do acts of goodness, kindness, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, whatever the case may be, then we would do it, right? We would show the affection. We would show the affection by action, rather than just by verbosities or by verbal consolation. So we would not verbally console, but we would be more action prone, So an Aspie might not necessarily say that, hey, I'm sorry for you, or sorry for this, and sorry for that. But of course, it will be this point in time where we are, and that's what we gotta get doing. There's, of course, there it is, spotted the flag. Flag spotted. I always carry it on me. The flag, That's what we do with that. That's what we gotta get that rock and roll, man, to get it on that drill, And that's what we have to get doing on that 24/7, and something which we have to get doing on that. And that's how we have to get rolling, Turn your heads left or right, because sometimes, of course, they might come from that side, and they might say from the Appalachian, and see, we got the sun shining, The sun shining on that rock and roll, and that's what we do on the drill 24/7. To make sure we, of course, appellate and conjugate all the relation points that we have to relate, of course, to aspiness, and how our weirdness and how awkward sometimes communication styles and verbosities might be weird and strange, that people might find strange and weird. But yes, now just a little bit of aspiness. But once again, to finalize on RA, retrograde amnesia, is that one doesn't lose. So what are the causes? They can be several. It could be trauma to the head, cranium trauma. It could be also drugs, lots of drug use. But I don't know if I was a junkie. Was I a junkie? If I did lots of drugs, I don't know. Alcohol also. So when you drink a lot of alcohol for a few years, so sometimes alcoholics. So let's say, I don't know, if I drank before 2014 a few years, if, of course, the open question is if, that also can cause memory loss. So for if you, somebody who's an alcoholic for a prolonged period of time, so it has to be a prolonged period of time, the intake, one might lose memory. But you don't, the memory that you lose is not necessarily the mathematical capabilities. So you will retain mathematical capabilities, of course, the brain mathematical capabilities. When you have, of course, to confluence the mathematical capabilities, you will retain them in the position, of course, that it is. So you will retain those mathematical capabilities, of course, in the situation. So you would retain that, and you would retain, of course, linguistic capabilities. You would lose personal memory from, for example, high school, which I don't remember. So my life, I have blackouts. Before 2014, my life remains a mystery, you know, spring 2014. But that is, of course, 11 years ago already. So if you keep in time with the timeline, that's already 11 years ago. And geopolitically, I remember the most, kind of what it was the Syrian civil war and the Islamic State, which they had declared a caliphate. They had declared a caliphate, and there was an intervention by our military in Iraq and Syria. And I remember just having these dreams. It was like, it was weird. It's really weird. So 2015-ish, I have these dreams. It was like I was there fighting I guess, among these demons, fighting these demons, you know, in a way. Open question, I guess. Because if I did want to apply to Kingston, and if I did, and if I actually served in secret units, I don't know. Did I serve in secret military units? And I survived the trauma, and then I woke up in Côte d'Ivoire in that underground small basement, because that's what I remember. I used to live in Côte d'Ivoire in an small, of course, basement. You know, small basement, full of mold, lots of mold, full basement full of mold. So I lived in an underground small basement type of, well, basically it was a basement. Even the kitchen was in the room in Côte d'Ivoire, underground basement. It was very small. It was like a tight prison cell. It wasn't really a prison cell, but it was like a type of prison cell. And besides it, my small bathroom. The bathroom was so small, tiny. It didn't even have a bathtub. It was very tiny, like a prison cell type of place. It was like a prison cell. That's what I remember. And I don't know how many years I lived there. And I remember moving from that moldy place to a better place, and just that mystery, you know. Maybe that's trauma, who knows? Am I a cyborg? I guess I'm just an N.A.C.P artist, athlete, philosopher who have previous past lives, incarnations. I served in the United States, 2 different wars, 156 years apart. I was born in the USA post 1776. Just read like George Patton's Three Glass Darkly poem, and here I am doing a little video, and I do what I'm good at, you know. I do what I'm good at, geopolitics, and all the other rest, the trauma, the financial stress, the scars, forget that for now. I'm just going to finalize N.A.C.P, and I'm going to N.A.C.P-ness. And the point that is to make is that I'm an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, strategist, thinker, philosopher, and artist-athlete. And I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. I have proof. In October 2019, I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. And so made, created, and produced and designed a workout training program system, designed, made, and created to go with such a scenario. I have proof. I make, of course, little small videos. I make them and I put them, and of course you can see them for yourself. So in 2019, I predicted what's happening now. In 2019, October 2019, I predicted the current situation which we're living now, the deterioration of relations. I gotta be honest, what I did not predict was, of course, the deterioration of relations. The deterioration of relations with Canada, between the United States and Canada. That, of course, I did not predict. The deterioration of relations with Canada. The deterioration of relations with Canada. The deterioration of relations with Canada, you know. The deterioration of relations with Canada. the deterioration of relations with Canada. That I did not predict, of course. That I did not predict, that the deterioration of relations with Canada. That I did not predict, that there's going to be a deterioration of relations with Canada. That I did not predict. That I did not predict that there's going to be on the deterioration of relations with Canada. That I did not predict. So this is new into the context that I have to, of course, pinpoint now. All, of course, the characteristics which we have and all the situation which has changed. That we are now in a bad relationship with the United States. That we are, since August 1st, we are designated as an unusual, an extraordinary threat. We are designated now as an unusual, an extraordinary threat because of the problems which I'm going to address. I'm just going to go hydrate. But first, of course, to conclude on Asperger's. Asperger's is one, not an illness, not a disease. I'm not a disease. Asperger's, of course, is a neurological mental divergent condition which makes me predisposed to those special interests. And of course, to certain characteristics, strange, weird, awkward sometimes behavior, which makes one odd and weird and strange, you know? Makes one odd, weird, and strange, and just that those are the characteristics which we have, of course, in the appellation where we are. Of course, the life of our life is surrounded, involved on a daily basis with super focus, super intensity, super concentration in those around those special interests. Those vary from ASPE to ASPE. Me as an individual sovereign citizen with a neurological mental divergent condition known as Asperger's. Not a mental illness. Again, it's not a disease. Red, my favorite. Wait a few seconds here to drink, hydrate, and gonna finalize, discuss on it. And then we're gonna take a little bit of marching towards the sun down there. Is gonna maybe take a different route to the mountain. Usually I let about a few seconds, and see, this is the privilege of civilization right here, as I put it, of course, in the appellation, of course, how it was built, and of course, with brains and muscle. So I presented my thesis in 2023 to the world, the privilege of civilization, and now we're gonna HYDRAT. Oh yeah, it's good, always good. I gotta get a lot of good hydration, cause it's good for the marching steps. Yeah, thank you workers. Yeah, otherwise we'll be drinking, have to filter water from the river, eh? Think about it, that's something we don't usually think, but think about it now. How of course, all those underground tunnel systems, and of course aqueducts, basically is aqueducts, how those aqueducts make this fact that we have clean zero pollution. We have not that, okay, not zero pollution necessarily in terms, but relatively clean and clean potable water, right? We have clean potable water thanks to the labor of many in the 20th and even dating back from the 19th century, but mostly from the 20th century. Should I go? I got 4 seconds. Gonna wait. Just gonna stretch a bit. So, to have those aqueducts underneath the water, to give us water, that is, it's connecting the water that exists, water sources, and of course it comes all the way to us, and it has quite a network underneath that we don't see, that allows us to drink at different fountains all over this big metropolis island of 2.5 million people. It allows us to drink water. So of course, brains and muscle and workers, put in work for us to have that. So that's the point making that civilization is a privilege. And see here, that we there, I'm going to discuss it. We, I discussed it in the past. That's a geopolitical, of course, statement in regards to the North American Collective, in regards, of course, to Quebec, and of course the situation where we are with the Quebec sovereignty movement. Supposedly there's been a growing segment of the population which is going to vote yes. So that is exactly a reference to, of course, the Quebec sovereignty movement, that is for yes, that they would vote yes, basically, if there would be another referendum. So you saw how several stickers were there. There were several stickers, of course, and those several stickers made it so, and they appellated, of course, integrally to do it, of course, in the proposition. And please, those got to be recycled. I hope somebody picks them up and recycles them. See those? Hope somebody picks them up and recycle those. That's why we need the DGA, the Dancing Goddess Army. That's how we need the DGA, the Dancing Goddess Army. And if there's fruits or anything like that, you can just, of course, put them there. And if there's fruits, just put them, and they're gonna be edible. And just put them on the ground, because those are, of course, biological. If they're there, they're biological with it. And I'm just gonna get out of the way for my fellow citizens, because if I get on the side here, it's because they have extra safety and security for them, because they got the carriage. So I calculate that it's better for me to just move on the side, So that's always a little bit of something which we gotta do, because where I am in the public. And now see how my brain works, because I have Asperger's. Asperger's brains are mutated, and of course they're appellated, of course, with our special interest, and all the special interests which we have, of course, in our dictation and all our resolutions, that now my brain, of course, switches to, of course, the geopolitical sphere, and of course the geopolitics of thinking about the truckers, all the truckers that are going north, that way is north, and that way is south. And of course they're going south with that, and they have butter, bread, cheese, milk, lettuce. They'll have a lot of things, which that one might be carrying something. I couldn't see blur, but that one might be carrying some cheese, maybe some bread, and maybe some other things that is carrying, of course, a lot of bacon, cheese, eggs. And now they're crossing Canada coast to coast, even across the 63, So that is, of course, something which I gotta be integrally complimenting and saluting, and of course putting it into geopolitical context, because they're elemental, super important, along with all our supply chains for the North American Collective, for the North American civilizational complex, of which Canada we are a part of. So that point event, me crossing that bridge, made me have a flash in my mind of calculating now around the 10, the 50, and the 3, how many trucks are going east, west, north, south. And during the duration of my march, maybe there's a few stops that are going to stop. They're going to travel some miles and kilometers. Of course, this is real knowledge and input in real time every second. They might pass some flock webcams, and they might pass some webcams in the highways. And of course, my total Dragon 911 North American Collective is for the proposition, of course, to integrate all citizens for total security, total service, total defense, and to have places where citizens can go. And we have these big telescreens, the big cities, and we see everything that's happening, transpiring all across the North American Collective in our big cities, and all the public and the private work, because it's a public-private partnership fundamentally that yours truly is calling for. And it takes a lot of work with me here doing this march and thinking about all the truckers, and all, of course, what they're doing there, all the truckers that they're doing, of course, in the concluency, and all, of course, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, all the train conductors. Gonna check a little bit of that. I love red, but these are not edible. I forgot the name. They probably have a Latin name, Latin script name, but I don't. It doesn't come to me now. They're not edible though, but they're quite cute if you look about them. That's why I got a lot of flora, fauna here. The name doesn't come to me now. So anyways, back to the trucks. Think about it. All the trucks that are going now with so much food, so much bacon, so much cheese, stopping, transporting, all our supply chains, very much reliant on the trucks, the railway conductor, the railways, on the truckers, the railways, and of course the trains. But the trains, the trucks most, then trains, then airplanes, of course. Airplanes. So you know what I'm gonna do? Because if I get more sun, we're gonna go straight towards the sun. We're gonna go straight toward the sun. Because I think if I pass that way, I'm gonna get more sun than if I go straight. So we're gonna just go by another side. Last time usually we go by that way, but of course somebody wanted sometimes to just change routes, I guess, you know, like a snake, sometimes just go different routes. So if we meditate now, of course today is Monday, so of course there would be a certain amount of trucks, but then we would have to categorize them, right? Because it would be different categories. What carries, for example, it could be food items, right? But it could be also mixed, and then those food items can be subdivided. We can go by price or by price or by special nutrition or by importance. And I guess bread and butter, right? Bread, eggs, cheese, meat like sausage, bacon, and then those are the first, and then the milk, because those who most on the table, I guess one of the most important, if not still the most important even in the 21st century, is the thing that comes from wheat, barley, or rye, you know, is bread, right? It's bread. And you have the butter, then you have the bacon, because that's what sustains us. And of course, the growing cost of living is something which affects me as well. So, of course, as we have in the concluency of all the considerations that we have, of course, to consider is, of course, to consider all of this dynamic. And of course, at this point in time now, when I'm taking these steps north, heading north, and some trucks full of goods are heading east, west, north, south, across the 10, the 50, and the 3, then of course they're heading with so much goods coast to coast, ocean to ocean. There's a definite point in time, right? So we have 63. If we take Canada, United States, of course we can enlarge it with Mexico also. We can enlarge it with Mexico, but first and foremost it's Canada, United States. But it can enlarge, of course, to conclude Mexico. So the enlargement can be, if we include Mexico, there's an added percentage of trucks. So I would say it's in the thousands. It's in the thousands. That's what I would say. I would say it's in the thousands, you know. That's what it is, and that's what it is with that. Probably in the thousands, and then we would quantify how much bread in terms of weight, right? It will be XYZ ABCD amount of tons of bread, tons of bacon, tons of butter, tons of bacon, tons of sausage, tons of tomato, tons of romaine lettuce, the LETTUCE, romaine lettuce. Then you have other components, other ingredients. You would have cheese, tons of milk, tons, of course, of cucumbers, all the vegetables and legumes. And then you have the ones that are sold the most. Right? And then you have different partitions and different places where they sell most, or even some legumes and vegetables such as avocados. It can be also fruits then. Bananas, apples, oranges, and of course oranges, and of course all the apples, the oranges, the bananas, the kiwis, avocados. My favorite one is grapes. I still have some grapes at home. So see how that subdivision can even be more divided. But nonetheless, now, Monday evening, Montreal, this is Montreal Hawk time, EST time. So Montreal EST time, Hawk Island, there's that fact, there's that truth, that appellation, that XYZWABCD amount in real life, or less. And it's always diminishing and increase every I don't know if every second, but let's say every 44 seconds or every minute, let's say. Or we could go every hour, right? Because to calculate every second, every minute, every hour, right? That'll be second and hours, right? Then be minutes, it could be done, but seconds, I don't know. But it could be every minute, let's say, or every hour best, right? So every hour. So in an hour from now, there's the minus and the plus. There's the minus and the plus. So there's a minus and there's a plus. Meaning to say that some trucks have reached their destination and they're carrying, let's say, some are carrying potatoes, some are carrying bacon, some are carrying cheese, some are carrying water, some are carrying romaine lettuce, some are carrying blueberries, strawberries, all the ingredients, all the rice, bread, XYZ, WABCD elements of nutritional importance, food items, right? So if they stop, if they reach their point of destination, then we would have to subtract that. So that would be in the minus. And now one is just being loaded and starts a journey, let's say, of course, from Florida to Quebec or from Quebec to California, that one's added. So in real time. So this is happening all now in real time, and my call for the 911 total Dragonomy total integration, because we have all the 3Gs, 4Gs, 5Gs. Of course, we can integrate the citizenry and monitor this in real life, because we have to know everything that's coming in and out, all the economic transportation of goods, and our reform best, the reform of the police system by the Dragon 911 total integrated and CIT, citizen integration theory, which we have to do. So now there's in real time, look at that hat. There's in real time this number. So this number exists now in real time. It always changes, It's always changing. Of course, not every second, but every minute at least. But maybe not even every minute, but at least temporarily in time, right? So maybe by the time that I finish this video, there's gonna be minus 156 trucks with A, B, C, D amount of goods, services, or whatever. And then there's an added 93 or 333 or 418. So it could be up and down all the time in circulation. So to be clear, what I'm calculating is all that are in circulation, right? Not that I have stopped, have reached their destination. All that are traveling on the highways, just to be specific. I'm going maybe a bit technical, academic a bit. Maybe I don't want to divulge into too much academic, technical. But these are matters, of course, for total security, total service, total defense. Part of my 911 Dragonomy total protocols, where we have, of course, implemented and where we have, of course, to do. And all that appellation, where we, of course, integrate all our capabilities to do it so. So this number always changes, always fluctuates. Always, right? It's never stagnant. It's never static. Okay, oh yeah, sometimes it's static, but it's not static continuously. It's always changing at some levels at some point in time, right? At some point in time, it's always changing. So it is, of course, now, or it is, of course, on the go, is something which you have to understand fully, that the number is not static. It changes every XYZ amount of time, right? So now a truck might stop. It's reached its destination. Maybe that truck had 44 kilos of romaine lettuce, right? And now another truck with 93 kilos of bacon is starting its journey, right? So it's always, the constant is always moving. It's always moving, right? It's in motion, in other words. It's fluctuating, it's in motion, right? So truck XYZ has reached its destination and it's going in motion, right? It's going in motion, right? It's going in motion. So of course, we are open for potential sabotage and espionage because of our involvements. Now, when I get back, I'm curious, of course, because I do geopolitics 24/7. There was the meeting of Trump, Zelensky, and the European leaders. What has occurred? What has happened? What has happened? Again, as much as I know the conflicts, and now I'm just going to finalize and say the final recall on Asperger's. What Asperger's is. and to get back to geopolitics. And keep in mind, meditate on what I said with the trucks, and there's a real number, and there's tracking, which we're going to have to implement the total SSD, security, service, and defense protocols for the total 911 Dragon Army, Thelemik, martial law statements in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead. I calling for the Imperial Republican protocols to fuse Canada and the United States September 11th, and as parallel with the World Peace Summit, parallel with the World Peace Summit, as we go towards the sun. And here's where my old neighborhood begins. See right here, nothing that I will to go back to. And I remember moving 2016. I thought it was 2016, but it was 2015. And my memory, 2014 spring before 2014 spring is on the blackout that. So I have trouble remembering my life prior to that. But here's kind of where my old neighborhood begins. See? Here's where my old neighborhood begins and kind of commences. And here's, I guess, where my new neighborhood begins. Right here, I'm in my old neighborhood. And please don't leave too much trash and garbage and other things, because of course you can be on the sides, because sometimes there's children. And don't leave bottles which can be broken, or we got to think about sanitation and public hygiene as much as we can. And my brothers and sisters, of course, who have lost their liberty, and of course brothers and sisters who are financially stressed, we got to have a little bit of rehabilitation as much as we can in the concordium of whatever we have, the appellation, of course, of the being in all our situational stratum where we are, of course, incongruent, of course, to be with the sun now always going. Sun is rising now, sun is setting, and of course all the implementation when we have added on. I guess I entered my own neighborhood. Nothing that I will to go back to. This is kind of where it begins. It's just because I want to go towards the sun, That's the only reason why I entered here, my own neighborhood. Besides that, I really have no purpose unless I go shopping, If I go shopping, then I come back to my own neighborhood. If I don't, then I go only for shopping or watching the movies. So here's I entered my own neighborhood, nothing that I will to come back to, but you can see the sun now. The sun is always shining and always setting, always shining, always setting. That is something which of course you got to implement, and of course you got to get on that go, of course, to the drill, and go on that drill side when you get it on the go. And that's what we have to get appellated here, of course, to conclusively imagine what I'm going to say. And sometimes it requires a little bit of technical apparatus where we are, of course, in the technical matters, of course, to be, of course, be a label, of course, to have the concluency and the congruency, of course, to have it on the go now, and to have it, of course, all the operation where we got the apparatus, of course, to be sublimated. All, of course, our civilizational complexes as I enter here in my own neighborhood, by stating again that nothing that I will to go back to, just living for today, carpe diem, and of course, and living for today is something, of course, which I gotta get that resolution, and of course, congruency, of course, to get at all the appellations where we are sublimated, and where our different energies in terms of the citizens, energies, of course, are coalesced in, of course, the greater good and the potencies which we have in our individual energies to be in harmony with another citizen's liberty and security in the public. Because now I am in the public, and I have added responsibilities, duties, and obligation myself, which I would have not had if I would have stayed home. If I would have stayed home, I would have not had the same duties, obligations, responsibilities as I do now. And as I said, nothing that I will to go back to is something that is true for me. I used to live over there in a very moldy underground basement type of prison cell. I guess I served my time, live with my scars, my memory loss, trauma, and I'm good at geopolitics. I'm androgynous, pansexual, 50-50. Want to rock and roll, we do that good loving freely. Consent and hygiene, you got to be of age. You're going to card you just like when you buy that legal cannabis here in Quebec, Canada, United States. It's 2019. Quebec, Canada, United States. 2019 is something which we do, of course, to get it on the go and get it on the drill, It's something which we have, of course, to get that sublimation. And sometimes we just got to break a little bit of those illusions, Got to break, of course, those illusions sometimes, because sometimes we get those illusions of assumptions and illusions about where we are as individuals and where we are as ourselves. I realize my own faults and weaknesses and vulnerabilities. I gotta give a little shout out to my anonymous friend, who gifted me 2 books on autism and Asperger's, and 1 book was loaned 4 times because it was a library loan, and that was one that's really great, and it opened my eyes and made me reflect and take some work, do some inner work about how I am vulnerable also because of this Asperger's condition, neurological mental divergent condition, that makes us more vulnerable because we see the world differently, and that's because we see the world in a different manner. Of course, we are less conducive, of course, to be in the appellational context where we are, of course, to get those relationships. But nonetheless, Asperger's has its pain, sufferings, but also there's a lot of things which Asperger's we can put on the table. Asperger's, and myself, of course, not only the trillions of kisses, but of course the hundreds, thousands, trillions of kisses which I put on the table, the trillions of kisses which I put on the table, along with the Trinity theories. And we are weird. We would focus on, this is an ASPE characteristic trait one-on-one. We would focus on that detail of the box, such as why is there a U4, ZY4, what is that 4 have to do with anything? And then would focus on certain details like that, up to the point of perhaps in very much intensity. And another characteristics of Asperger, this, if you see somebody doing this in a supermarket, this might be an Asperger because I've been doing it for years and years and years. So when you see somebody inspecting an object close to the face, you might see somebody inspecting an object close to the face, very close to the face, like 2-3 inches. That person, citizen, might be an Asperger, might be an Asperger, might be an Asperger, might be an Asperger. So that is just, of course, the situation where we have, of course, the fully understanding, of course, to be that we have Asperger's. And as people, of course, with Asperger's, that's, of course, something which we have to do, and we have, of course, to understand and work on the characteristics. So that book, Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, it's Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome is a book which really opened my eyes to many vulnerabilities of which myself and many Asperger's we have due to these characteristics, and not knowing how we are sometimes perceived. And because of our, again, it's not an illness, I'm not a disease, Asperger's are not a disease, it's just that we have these characteristics. Once we sometimes are direct and straightforward, we might not want to offend, but it's because how we are, you know, we might be straightforward, and we might be straightforward. We might be straightforward with it, and that's why I say, you know, I don't want to waste your time, mind. If you want to be friends with benefits, 18 plus, we're gonna rock and roll. Otherwise, well, that's about how we rock and roll. The Island of the Hawk and the 63, and for world peace with it as a philosopher. But paradoxically, I predicted what's happening now, and of course, not being perfect, having flaws, and having flaws myself. You know, it's always something that I love, of course, to see those red and whiteys there. Little flowers, beautiful combination, that red and white. So yeah, that is, of course, that's how it is with us Aspi. So we can be weird, awkward, strange, and we can repeat things. These are characteristics, not symptoms, because it's not a disease. So myself included, we might repeat repetition of phrases or sentences or words is an Aspi characteristic. Might also say the exact same sentence that somebody says or utters. That is, of course, called echolalia. Echolalia, and we might utilize too much intellectual, cosmopolitan, appellational, sophisticated language when it's not necessary. And another part, I remember that Aspies, myself included, we have these ritual-like routines. So our lives are usually revolved with intensity, super focus, super dedication around those special interests, also known as obsessive, but I don't use the terminology obsessive because obsession is more for somebody who is neurotypical, but for us it's really not necessarily an obsession in that sense, but it can be a very source of joy and pleasure, and really we can excel. And of course, I excel at geopolitics, sports and fitness, and rock and roll. And that is just how we are, of course, in the conclusion where we are, where we rock and roll for the go, and where we gonna get it on the go for that. And that's where we have to be doing, you know, gotta be doing on that rock and roll, and that's what we have to be doing, man. Turning your heads left and right. You gotta turn your heads left and right when you cross this street, and that is just something when we have to get doing on the go, to get it on the go. That's what we are. And that's what we have to get doing. Sometimes it's just working on these characteristics, building bridges, between us, because me and Aspies were part of this zero. There's not a lot of Aspies, so less than 1%, less than half of a percentile, about 0.44%, about 0.44%. So 0.44% is not a lot of people, There's not a lot of people who are Aspies. There's not a lot of people who are Aspies, right? It's 0.44%. 0.44%. There's not a lot. Not a lot. There's not a lot. It is a tiny minority, right? Small minority. Look at these beautiful yellows of less than 1%, less than half of a percent. About 0.44% constitute the population of Aspies. So compute that, calculate that, less than half of a percent, not even 1%, about 0.44% North Americans. That's why it's not so well known. And even 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with a fellow citizen. I don't know if he was a citizen or not, but he said, "Oh yeah," when I mentioned it, I have Asperger's, he said, "Oh yeah, I know the disease." And I said, no, it's not a disease. And he said, no, I know the disease of the brain. No, it's not a disease. It is a neurological, mental divergent condition, which makes me predisposed to those special interests, and certain conducts, certain weird, awkward behavior. We lack social skills sometimes, and we're not so good because our brain has mutations. It's not outwardly visible, but of course those mutations are internally. The mutations are the microscopic. Think about it as transistors. Small transistors are small, microscopic at the nano level, right? So that's where those mutations of the brain happen, at the microscopic level. They're not outwardly visible on the cranium of the brain of the head, right? They're not visible, protruding out. And internal, small microscopic, at the microscopic level. And so the cause of Asperger's is inconclusive. We do not know for sure what causes Asperger's, also known as HFA, high functioning autism. It's either hereditary, biological, that is genetic, genes, or a combination of genes and the environment. So the cause is inconclusive, as you cannot medicate Asperger's because it's not an illness, it's not a disease, and I don't require lots of support. It's always building bridges. What I build small bridges, and we build small bridges, medium bridges, big bridges, extra large bridges. So whether we build big bridges, we big bridges. Look at that beautiful sun. Big bridges, small bridges, or rather, we can build these 4 categories just like when you order a coffee or fries. You might order small size, medium size, large size, or extra large. So within these 4 categories of small, medium, large or extra large, small, medium, large or extra large, right? These four, just like you can order a coffee, which is sometimes small, medium, large, extra large. You can also order small, medium, large, or extra large. Or you can order fries that are small, medium, large, or extra large, right? Not just coffee. So that is the same type of categories of bridges which we must build with different institutions, organizations, or neurotypicals, which you constitute the 99%, because you are the vast majority. So we live in your world, but it's not just your world. We share this world, and we have a lot to contribute by building these bridges. So I don't have antagonistic feelings, I don't have negative antagonistic feelings versus neurotypicals. It's just that we have, of course, to build these bridges. We got to build these bridges, we got to build these bridges, like we gotta getting on that Rock&Roll with that, and that's how we gotta get doing with that Rock&Roll 24/7 on the building of those bridges for that, and that's how we have to get on that appellation, to getting on those drills for that, and we gotta get it on those poles, and sometimes we just gotta get a little bit of that action and give a little of that swish and switch it left and right and in the middle and build the top above and round the bottom, of course, to build those bridges conclusively and concurrently in the building of the bridges of those 4 categories, and sometimes even with subcategories. So let's build them together, bridges of working together and understanding. And Aspis, we got 3 problems. The main problems which Aspis face, of course, because I guess building these bridges is not sometimes easy, requires mutual effort, but the 3 main problems of Aspis is lack of friends. I have the solution for me, so you don't waste my time, I don't waste yours. Friends with benefits only. Friends with benefits only. Friends with benefits only from now on. That's my solution. And I don't need a lot of friends, but changing massages, do that 18 plus black and white and rainbow, man and woman, a royal queer love, rainbow dragon love. Lack of the high depression and suicidal rates. It's 9 times higher for Aspis. So for every 1 neurotypical, there's 9 Aspis who live depression and suicidal. I lived it for a few years. What got me out of depression and being suicidal was crossing Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean, was crossing Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean, was crossing Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean, was crossing Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean, was crossing Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean, was crossing Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean. That's what got me out of being depressed and suicidal. What got me out of depression was crossing Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean, That is just what got me out of being depressed and suicidal. When I crossed Canada coast to coast, that event made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians. I established a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians in 2017, celebrating 8 years. Wow. 8 years. Wow. As long as my memory goes, before 2014, spring 2014, it remains a mystery. But in 2017, in August, went to BC, British Columbia. Of course, went to BC, British Columbia, Vancouver. And in September, in Halifax, went to Halifax. September went in Halifax. So I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2017, 8 years ago. 8 years ago. So that event transformed my whole life. Transformed my whole life. I love this garden setup here, how it's blending in with the rocks. So that event transformed my whole life. Before that time, I was, like I said, for a few years, depressed and suicidal. That's how I got it. Gonna get on that depression and suicidal, and it's high for Aspis, depression, high rates. So I conquered it by that event. Summer 2017, crossing Canada coast to coast made me establish a strong esprit de corps. My family, Quebec, Canada, all who come to join us from wherever in the world here in the coming Republic, Imperial Republic, because the king is absent. It's time for the Republic. The king is absent. It's time for the Republic. The king is absent. It's time for the Republic. The king is absent. It's time for the Republic. The king is absent. It's time for the Republic, And so, crossed Canada coast to coast. That event made me come out of being depressed or suicidal, Made me come out of being depressed, suicidal, and of course, that's when I got out of being depressed and suicidal. 2017. That was 2017. And of course, that got me out of being depressed and suicidal, Yeah, and another thing we suffer from, so those 3, but the third one's coming. So, lack of friends, for me the solution, friends with benefits. The depression and suicidal part, I have been writing and calling for mass financing tourism, because just changed my whole life. Seeing Canada coast to coast, crossing Canada coast to coast in 2017, and the third one, of course, the third one is lack of employment, lack of employment, you know. Lack of employment, you know. 80%, that's where the unemployment stands for ASPE. Stands at 80%. 80, that's 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5. 80%. 80%. 80%. That's what it is, 80%. 80%, that is, of course, where it's at, 80%. That's where it stands at, 80%. That's where it stands at, 80%. That is a huge percentage. Can you imagine? Huge percentage. 80% is unacceptable. Can you imagine 4 out of 5 to be unemployed? Can you imagine? 80% for ASPEs. That is a high unemployment rate, which is the highest among, I guess, the communities, you know, of neurodivergent. ASPEs, unemployment is at 80%. Oh, there's no street connecting. I wanted to go to the other side, but seems I'm gonna have to go around about it. 80%, imagine. That's very high number. 80%, 4 out of 5 for the fellow ASPE communities. So myself included, most ASPEs, myself, I had many jobs, many employments, just keeping them. I had many jobs, sometimes 4 months, 3 months, a few weeks, a few months. Many jobs in the past years is just maintaining long-term employment has been difficult. And this is a fact for people with Asperger's, is because of our weird, sometimes we just, social matters are more difficult. But I love that flower, so nice. Social, you know, I guess I always joke because I said we would be very high unemployed if we would just have to go get to work, go do the work for a few hours and not discuss anything personal, and then we would be, however aspy and queer and androgynous as we could be outside of the work without discussing personal family or, you know, stuff like that. I guess that would be ideal for Aspies. We would be more at home, you know what I mean? More at ease, I guess. More at ease. Well, I guess we'll be higher unemployment. But if it's not, the workplace is mostly made from a neurotypical perspective, so it's not Aspie-esque. So that's why there's the problematics of high unemployment, which it's 80%. 80%, 4 out of 5. That's 8 out of 10, even higher than 80%. So you can imagine how high that is. Let's think about that. That is totally unacceptable if you are to think about it just from the logic perspective, from a just devoid, I guess, because if you don't have Asperger's, or if somebody might not even know what it is, that you might not even, of course, be considering of whatever the appellation is for the contrasting aspiness and Asperger's and neurotypical workspace relations, and how the interactions can sometimes be weird and awkward in the points, of course, that we are, of course, to complement each other for the beings. So that is just aspiness. And of course the aspiness, of course, is of course interpolated with all, of course, the characteristics of the neurotypicals. So thus the way we communicate, the way we interact can sometimes be offensive or misunderstood or by neurotypicals, and that can cause a problem, and it's unacceptable. We got to work on that, and that's my only stress now, financial. But there's some solutions, you know. There's some solutions. Aspies of the world unite, and thank you to the fellow Aspie who last year, I think October last year, donated $25.44. I bought wine, bacon, about wine, bacon, cheese. Now we did a first. It's been, wow, it's been 8 years I haven't done that. Last time maybe 7 years since I last crossed by that way, by that side to go there. 7 or 8 years, wow, as far as my memory goes. But I remember a few years, I was roaming these streets of Montreal with one foot in the streets, one foot in the libraries, for a few years, and it's just, that's what we got. And a few years, and one foot in the streets, one foot in the libraries, and that's what we got, and that's what we're gonna get doing. That's what we gotta get that drill, man. Cherchez-vous du personnel là, pour du travail?
Non.
Ok. Ah, ça fait plaisir, je demandais de même comme ça.
Ah ben oui, je t'aurais pu.
Ouais, bye. So what I asked in French if they were hiring, there's a little French there, because we speak French here.
English guys.
Hey?
French and English all the time.
Oh yeah, French and English, but they were speaking in French, so I spoke it in French.
Oh.
I speak both, So I don't mind. I was just for the camera. I was saying to the camera, that because I do translation and I was speaking in English, so just so that if somebody looks at it and they understand it from the States, that here in Quebec we're bilingual. We speak French and English, because you might come here and hear French and like.
I'm from Montreal. It's normal. It's English and French. It's two language principle in English and French. What the heck are you doing? Speaking Spanish or Korean?
Just, it's like Celine Dion,
Yeah, man.
Ciao, ciao. Like Celine Dion, French and English, man. Ciao, ciao. So that was somebody, I guess, a little cousin there. He said a few words, and he's doing about his business, and he asked me, of course, French and English, and I said, yeah, French and English, bilingual here, that's how we rock and roll. And since I heard my auntie there speak a little French and English, and I always got to get a little bit of work when I do, and I got to get the work what I do, and they got to get on that go, and that's it, what we do. And there's just something which we got to do that loving, and I asked if they were looking for a job, because they were doing some work there. Maybe I said maybe I could, so I asked on the spot, because last time that's how I got some work, and I did some 5 hours last year and a few months ago. Not really last year, but yeah, even last year. Wow, it's gonna be a year already. Wow, yeah, I did some work, and just so I asked if we needed some work and to move some bricks, and I moved some construction bricks, and I got some $50, and spend about that food, and that's how it is. I work, and I now let people know that I am this neurodivergence, and sometimes, of course, we are direct and straightforward, and that's just how we are, and that's just how we are, of course, in the categorization, of course, to be and to appellate, and that is just what we do, I love to work, and that is something which I have to conclude, that my difference is, of course, something which can be different, and can be, of course, on the characteristics of being on the go, and being now to show, and to be on the conclusive side of where we are internally, and where we show, of course, the appellation that we are in the very tough economic position. And if I would have been a millionaire, I would have loved to give. Now I would have went incognito, and I would have given to homeless billionaires. If I would have been a billionaire, I would have given some millions with a hoodie dirty on, and would have given across the 63, 50,000, 50,000, 50,000, 50,000, I guess tens of thousands. And I said, this is your second chance. Take this money, move out somewhere, and go, of course, pay an apartment for a year, a few months, get off that booze, get off that Fenty. And from now on, what I hear about fentanyl, it doesn't seem, of course, that it is a drug. it seems to me more that it is not a drug, but it is actually not a drug, but it's not a drug really for me anymore, because more and more I'm starting to put it as a biological weapon. Because it doesn't make sense, because if it would have been a drug, you would want people to keep using and buying. But if people are dying from it, then it doesn't make sense from the business of the drug trade, you know? The drug trade business doesn't make sense in this position, of course, in this proposition. As a business, usually the drugs, they want the junkies and to hook up. And I don't know, prior to 2014, spring 2014, maybe I was a junkie. Maybe I was doing drugs, consuming drugs, doing alcohol, doing lots of drugs, doing whatever the case may be, and consuming on that go and getting on that drill. But not now. I don't do drugs, and I haven't had cannabis for years and years and years. I had it, and I still have it after so many years. And now we're just gonna go look at a little bit of that garden before we go back up, because we're going back, of course, back to the mountain actually. But I just want to take a look at this beautiful garden here. For again, yeah, always open for business. And here we love that French, as you hear it in. I was born here on the island between 1688. I lived as a woman in 1635, and here I am, you know, saluting the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the plumbers. Somebody got to sing that rock and roll for the boys and girls in blue. I served in the SPVM Police de Montréal in a past life, and I served in the RGRC, in the United States Armed Forces, twice. I was born a man, a woman, a man, and now I'm 50-50. Androgynous, you got to see that loving due to my reincarnations. Read George Patton, Through a Glass Darkly. George Patton did not mention that he was my wife in a previous incarnation, but I was his wife, and he was my wife. Different incarnations, and I gotta give a shout out for that garden there. It's just so beautiful and luscious, and it quadruples my smile. And I gotta give a shout out to the crane operators. Always love to see crane operators, you rock and roll. Building, of course, on the cranes, and those flipping some burgers, some cheeseburgers, some hamburgers. Those flipping some of those burgers, cheeseburgers. Preparing that food across the 63, giving a little bit of that gray, doing a little bit of that arbeit, doing a little bit of that arbeit with that, and doing a little bit of that arbeit for the go. And that is just something which we have to appellate together here. And you know, we gotta get it for the empire workers, the workers' empire, the North American Collective Workers' Party, for that arbeit. Super important to salute the butchers, the bakers, the cooks, the nurses, the daycare workers changing some diapers. And as I sing that rock and roll for the boys and girls in blue, I gotta sing that rock and roll for my brothers and sisters who take their second chance and who do their criminal rehabilitation. You take your second, third, fourth chances, and you turn your life around, and you do your criminal rehabilitation. I gotta say that I am, of course, pretty proud of you, and I love you, and keep it up, and you know, that's what it is with that, and that's what we gotta get doing with that, and so we gotta get doing on that, and that is just something which I have to appellate on that, and that is just the situation, you know, where we present ourselves. And here my great family, of course, we gotta get that rock and roll, and we gotta do on that love and that rock and roll, you know, something which we have to get doing on that, and we gotta get doing for the left and the right. And sometimes we gotta watch it when we cross the street here, because the brakes malfunction, you know. Somebody lost a shoe here, I don't know, maybe in a storm or from above. Could have been from above, but across the street and go there, turn our heads, you never know. Sometimes you just gotta get rolling and get that crossing of the streets and turn your heads. And to start your fitness journey today, I lost between 80 and 93 pounds after I crossed Canada coast to coast. That's when I got out of my depression, and that's since I was on a fitness journey since then. Since 2017, that's when I was on a fitness journey. And of course, that was whenever I pass by senior citizens, I remind myself that I worked with the senior citizens, and they built all this, but most part, not some build different parts of our civilization. North America more than others, more than king. The king is absent. I'm for the Republic, but I worked in the CSSLDs. I worked in the CSSLDs, and I worked in the CSSLDs, CSSLDs. Senior homes, and that was a good experience. I really loved it. And after the probation period, it wasn't extended, my work period, and that's it. That's all. I have many jobs in steel and warehouses, and it's tough for Aspies. It's very tough. 80%, more than 80% of Aspies are unemployed, and that's the problem, is keeping the job. Keeping it, maintaining it. That can be problematic for Aspies in general. So, because we're different, and this difference sometimes can be picked up right away. Right away can be picked up by others, by we might inspect certain objects or look at certain details, such as, for example, we might inspect if there's numbers. Remember, there's one that I look and there's a pattern number. It's 6144660, something like that. It has like 4 6s and a 1 and 2 4s and like a 0 and a 2. If you check on my past videos, this one doesn't have it, but another one I was reading the numbers. So we might pay attention to like special weird awkward details like that. And that is just something which we have, of course, to be for the point where we are in time, something which we have, of course, to be in the appellate, of course, where we are to get doing on those things where we are, of course, to appellate, and of course to get it on the drill, So that is just something which we have, of course, to congruently be, and congruently, of course, implement our full capabilities where we are the majestics and the individual, of course, appellatives. And let's see if this one has it. So there are solutions. So now I'm just going to discuss geopolitics. That's fundamentally what I am good at, right? So we're going to cross on the other side, and then we're going to keep going. So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019 in October. I have proof. I have the video, and I made the little small videos. So I really have proof of what I'm about to say. And focus on this. So I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration, aka World War III, as is happening now, and it has been happening with the deterioration of relations, with the conflicts, geopolitical conflicts, and the end of the post-Cold War hegemonic dominion by the USA. However, what's new for me, what I did not predict, and this alarms me, is of course the deterioration of relations with the United States. With the United States, between Canada and the United States. Now I have to say, I get shivers whenever I discuss it. Not just because I was born, of course, in the USA in 3 past lives, once as a woman, twice as a man, but of course because I had, of course, lived and fought in 2 different wars in the United States Army. And I know certain things that you might not know as Quebecers, Canadians. Okay, so since August 1st, 2025, we are designated by the United States, by Trump and the Trump administration, as an unusual, an extraordinary threat coming from Canada. Right? Listen to the words. We are now Canada. There's an unusual, an extraordinary threat coming from Canada. So in other words, we are designated. Canada is an unusual and extraordinary threat, and on 1st of August, that's 19 days ago, of course, there was the decision to increase the tariffs on Canadian goods, right? And this I did not predict, that there's going to be this low relations. Nothing, and never in the history, of course, recent history, have we ever heard anything like that. That Canada, we constitute an extraordinary and unusual, UNUSUAL, unusual and extraordinary threat. It's serious to the United States, to the American people even. You got to keep that in mind. This is really serious. And of course we are, as having neglected the cooperation police cooperation. Our police forces to have neglected their cooperation. Our police forces to have neglected their cooperation with the RCMP. Well, correction, with the FBI and the NSA, National Security Agency, another law enforcement agency of the USA, but our RCMP, of course, is the federal police, which equivalates to the FBI. So that our police forces have, that and the government and the police forces have lacked the words, I don't want to use my own words, but the words that are written there in black and white, that if it's of course in black and white, that of course it is the appellatives, and of course that we have designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat, due of course to the fact and of course to the cause that the fentanyl which has entered this fiscal year, that was in August 1st, has already tripled since last year, 2024, and that it could have killed potentially 16 million Americans, the fentanyl that crossed in 2025 from Canada into the United States. So that is the cause, that is the problem which they blame on us. And also that our law enforcement agencies did not cooperate. I think the word is coordinate, actually. Cooperate, coordinate, there's interrelated, right? Because to cooperate and to coordinate, if you coordinate something, then you cooperate. If you cooperate, you can coordinate. Not necessarily if you can cooperate, you not necessarily coordinate something as an action to be taken together, such as I'm calling for the implementation of the Total Mobile Defense Theory. When that four-letter acronym, the TMDT, Total Mobile Defense Theory, when we had the fifth acronym, that TMDT becomes, we add an S, and of course we add the S to it, and thus it becomes a system. And to implement, of course, what I call Operation Northern Scorpion. So that I cannot discuss over you too much because I developed it a few years ago, and of course it is national security sensitive. Yeah, so I cannot divulge too much information, detail about it, because I have to discuss only with high-ranking generals of Canada and United States, and this is a beautiful garden here, and of course, that's what I gotta get doing with that, and wish I could give my anonymous friend a house, but back to what I was saying, we are also designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat, and the other point in time and point in view is, although not, the point is that this fentanyl is very potent, right? It's very potent. Not necessarily that so much crosses into the US, but it seems like the point is that it seems that it has increased in the past years. And even if we compare this year to last year, it seems that it has paradoxically still increased with how much it crossed, right? And we have to be honest. And sometimes with certain things, that last year on the 25th of October, 2024, last year, is not even a year yet. Look at these beauties, just wow, quadruples my smile. Wow, what a beautiful, just yummy. But we have to be serious, and we have to understand that last year, and the RCMP, our federal police, the RCMP, like the FBI type of institution for Canada, they warned us for years. They warned us that there's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized group. They warned us that there's a growing transnational criminal organized syndicate group. For years and years and years, they warned us that there's a growing transnational criminal organized syndicate transnational group. That there's a growing organized criminal transnational syndicate groups establishing themselves in Canada. See, an N.A.C.P, for example, would be like myself. Now I'm really curious about these numbers here. See? All that, Coulard, RIL71, and all these numbers here, those are details which sometimes N.A.C.Ps were a bit weird about, that some of the population might not even care at all about those special numbers there, but nonetheless, that's N.A.C.P trait for you. So back to what I was saying, of course, is that fundamentally the RCMP has warned us back in, of course, years and years and years ago. And last year on the 25th of October, oh, I love that. That's gorgeous. Gorgeous garden here. I just love this garden. So back in October 2024, October 25th, See, it makes me think of the Napolitan, that ice cream. I love it when it's 4-color mixed like that with red and white and orange and the other color. It makes me think of the Napolitan ice cream. I think it's called Napolitan, and it usually has 4 different colors. Napolitan ice cream. Anyways, so in 2024, 25th of October, the RCMP warned us, the RCMP warned us. And they warned us for years and years ago. And in 2024, October 25th to be specific, the RCMP did a police operation and seized the biggest ever drug super lab in Canadian history. Supposedly they even had some techniques which was utilized by the cartels to build fentanyl, and supposedly they seized between about 95 million pills or fentanyl doses. The doses, I don't know exactly doses, pills, capsules, I guess more doses and pills, doses of fentanyl, right? They're dosages, right? Let's say doses. So 95, which, listen to this, which according to the RCMP specialists, they could have killed, listen to this, it gives me shivers, it's serious. They could have killed the population of Canada twice over. So if we're 44 million, those doses of fentanyl could have killed 88 million Canadians. You realize how serious this is? So it's proven on the ground by this RCMP operation of 25th of October, which paradoxically is the beginning of Scorpio month. Well, 3 days already into Scorpio, going on the 4th. As I'm been calling for years and years and years for the establishment of fusing our security forces, the RCMP of the FBI and our forces into the Dragon Army, aka Imperial Republican SSD Legion, and mobilizing 1% of each new state of the 63, the 10 provinces, 3 territories, and 50 states for total security, total service, total defense, and of course for total security, total service, total defense, and that is of course integral to the plateau of the Operation Northern Scorpion. Because the Scorpion goes, of course, from Mexico all the way to Canada. So it comes from Mexico, it comes all the way to Canada. From Mexico, it comes all the way to Canada. Right, there's one species of scorpion which reaches Canada, and that's called the northern, from the word north. North, Northern, northern, like a northerner, northern Scorpio. So Operation Northern Scorpio, you can check my past videos, but I don't discuss it over much because it's part of the integral security service and defense, and it's part of what I predicted back in 2019, and it's made for today, for 2025 in the coming years, because I don't know how we're gonna get in this. Things are getting worse. The cost of living, growing cost of rent, strikes, and all the mess. It's a mess with things which we have not predicted, things problematic. And so the RCMP has seized this drug super lab in 2024, October 25. Biggest ever drug super lab in Canadian history. Biggest ever. Never has ever been in our history such a big super lab, even I guess they call it super labs. And this was in the note in Canada. That these super labs are more extant in, of course, Canada. That these super labs are more extant now, existing more in Canada, and they can produce, I guess, they said weekly, something monthly, between 44 and 66 pounds. 44 and 66 pounds of fentanyl. That's the United States. But see, this part of the saying that we have a growing domestic super lab problem is proven by our RCMP, our National Police Force, our Federal Police Force, which last year, October 25, they seized the biggest ever drag. It's on, you can check it on the RCMP line on the 25th in Surrey, BC. Imagine that could have killed so many Canadians. So it's serious. You understand what's going on. And now I'm more and more quantifying, labeling this fentanyl as a bioweapon, man. I don't know. It doesn't make sense that people are dying so much. So many people are overdosing on fentanyl. It's from a drug perspective, right? If we legalize cannabis in 2019, it doesn't make sense, because usually you want the consumer to keep on buying, to work and to bring you the money if you're a dealer, right? That's just the business, right? But it seems counterintuitive to be a drug that's manufactured for business. Rather that it is not, to me, it seems more and more that it's not a drug, but it's actually a hidden biological weapon. A bioweapon, man. In reality, hidden. I don't know. Not to be paranoid, but it doesn't make sense, right? I just ask why. I mean, maybe you ask some, I don't know, some gangster rappers or whatever, you know. Hope you do your rehabilitation. Let's rebuild the ghettos together and give some charity, but you know, because I gotta pull that whip on gangsters for the farmers, the butchers, the truckers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, plumbers, electricians, welders, those fast food workers. Gangsters, don't scare me. 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 Wow. Do your rehabilitation, you know? So we need you to build a 44. We need you to build a 44 mass cities tunnels, part of the North American Criminal Rehabilitation Act. So now back to what I know most. Geopolitics. Well, this was part of geopolitics, what I know most. Especially when that geopolitics, rock and roll, dancing and fitness. But back to what I was saying, of course, in the manner and the credence of all the appellations where we are, of course, conclusive to be, of course, on the scale of the balancing and to get into deeper geopolitics. So now this statement which I'm about to make, you will have to say yes. You will have to say yes. You cannot say no, and you cannot say maybe. And you cannot say no, and you cannot say maybe. You cannot say no, and you cannot say maybe. You have to say yes, 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 yes. So it has to be accorded in the plural, in the positive, in the affirmative. This following statement: us as Quebecer Canadians, Quebecers, Canadians, and for my brothers and sisters in the USA, this is reciprocal for you towards us and for us towards you. When it comes, whether you're on the right, on the left, in the center, center right, center left, right? I'm not discussing far left, far right here, but generally, centrists, leftists, rightists, center right, center left. That our main interest when it comes to foreign affairs. I'm not discussing domestic affairs. When it comes to foreign affairs, it is to have the best, most cordial relations with each other. It is to have the best. We have to place as a number one priority, that is priority. I'm relating to foreign affairs priorities. We have to have the best, most cordial relations with each other. The best, most cordial relations with each other. Economic, social, financial, diplomatic. It is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, diplomatic relations with each other. That is just what it is. Us in the number one spot when it comes to a hierarchy of importance, it is to have, of course, the best, most cordial economic relations with each other. That is just what it is with that. It is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial relations with each other, you know. Us is number one spot. That is the number one place we must place as a top priority. You cannot argue with that. That is a geopolitical fact and a political fact when it comes to foreign affairs, foreign. So as a number one priority, us, our politicians, whether on the left, on the right, in the center, center left, or center right, and vice versa, for my brothers and sisters in the USA, you towards us, is the same thing. The same principle applies, and this is a constant. It has been so at least since the dissolution of the British Empire. For years and years and years and years, for decades it has been so. It is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial relations with each other. That is just what it is as the principle, right? The principle. So you cannot say no. You cannot say yes. You cannot argue with that. That is just the principle, and it is the so, and it is yes, 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 yes. You cannot say no. You cannot say even maybe. It is a constant, and this constant has been so for decades, and it is so today, and will continue to be so. Think of it as just like the pi symbol. It's a symbol which represents not the edible pie, but the pi number, which is represented by the letter N. A letter N, like Norman, Normandy, neutral, neurodivergent, natural, the letter N. That letter N has like two heads, two faces, two heads, and just that is why our coming empire, our fusion of Canada and the United States will kind of be two-headed, two-faced in many ways. One to be benevolent and bless, the other one to punish, I guess. One to be benevolent to bless, and the other one to punish, I guess. One to be benevolent to bless, and the other one to punish, I guess. So that is, of course, what it is in the appellation. One, it is to bless. That's why our coming empire, the fusion of Canada, the 10, the 15, the 3, the US into the Imperial Republic, the Imperial Perpetual Republican Union, our Imperial Perpetual Republics Union, our Imperial Perpetual Imperial Republics Union, our Perpetual Imperial Republics Union Acts, which you gotta sign. Let's do it September 11th on the mountain. That's a mass public-private partnership, which that is fundamentally the accord of my dream, and fundamentally, of course, the accord of what we are to do in the times where we are now, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. So we must strive to have the best, most cordial relations with each other. There's no, there's no maybe, there's only yes, 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 yes. You cannot say no, you can only say maybe. So you cannot say no, you cannot say maybe. That is what it is. That's just what it is for the go. What a beautiful, what? Look at this beauty. So once again, our number one priority when it comes to foreign affairs, I'm not discussing domestic internal affairs, must be for us to strive to have the best economic, social, financial, military, defense, social, cultural, commercial, diplomatic, military, defense relations with each other, and vice versa for the United States. You also have to place Canada on the number one top priority to have those best economic, social, financial, military, defense relations with us, although you have a border with Mexico. But besides that, that is so because of our geographical reality, the fact that we are surrounded by two oceans, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We have coast to coast, ocean to ocean, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, right? We got two oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific. The Atlantic and the Pacific, right? We have the Atlantic and the Pacific. The Atlantic and the Pacific, you know? We have the Atlantic and the Pacific, and that's just how we gotta get drilling with that, you know? And besides that, we have our social, cultural, the history, which binds us in a collective civilizational complex, or the North American civilizational complex, of which we are not only divorced, but we are distinct from Western civilization, and we have those distinctions while we are not divorced. So that is just something, of course, you have to say yes to in the manner that it is a constant, not a variable, and it is so now. It was so for many, many decades, and beautiful flowers, and it will be so till our fusion. And I guess why not a world government, just like in that fifth element type of world federation, but it's something which we have to get doing like that. We got to get on that drill to go. So that is just the constant. That's where the pi symbol comes in. So that must be affirmed, and from there we can proceed to implementing my DRT for and signing the Perpetual Imperial Republic Unions Act, the Perpetual Imperial Republic Union Acts, the Perpetual Imperial Republics Union Acts. Just want to go on the other side because of the gardens there. So now I'm going to discuss the DRT, the debt fusion theory. Super important to discuss it, but once again, that is the geopolitical reality for us due to the geographical position of being surrounded by two oceans. To the east is the Atlantic, to the west is the Pacific, and of course to our common history. That's why I say the king is absent, and my fellow Canadians, the king is absent. We should have gotten rid of the merci, thank you. We should have gotten rid of the monarchy, the monarchic system in 25 years ago. At the turn of the 20th century, for real, 1999, we should have just gotten rid and become a republic altogether in the late 20th century, if not the 20th century. Look at this. Thank you, public workers. What a beauty. I just love it. Look at those vivid colors right there. And wow, what a great garden. Just brings me some joy to pass by it every time. And this is beautiful architecture here. As you can see, the enjoyments of the variety of diverse architecture which Montreal offers and has to offer, of course, the offers which of course we have here, and these beautiful flowers. You can just check a little bit of those, and thank you for planting them. Public workers, the Imperial Republic's embellishment is a major part of our rehabilitation of the complex, and of course the rehabilitation of these beautiful flowers as we are now in the public, and we gotta conquer it and consummate all our Republican Imperial facilities to appellate the dimensions where we are integrally in the sphere of our being. And this is a really great one, you know. This is just a good one, you know, to get the rehabilitation and to get the go and to get, of course, the dynamics of we have. Of course, we gotta get it on that go to get a drill, and that's something which we have to get, of course, loving, because love is also important. You know, you gotta say sometimes love, and in the Dragon Army, I guess you're gonna have to get that love drills, because if you can't say LOV, black, white, or rainbow, and pussy cock, man or woman, then you know you need to be of the Dragon Army song, you know. So pledge your allegiance, your family, and that's what it is, you know. We gotta get that coast to coast, and SSD, security, service, and defense, and that's how we're gonna get drilling with that, and that's how we're gonna get complimentary, and so we're gonna get on that love side of things when we are. Sometimes love is important, you know. That's just something which we have to get a drilling, you know. So it's super important on that appellation, you know. So of course now that's where we're gonna go up to the mountain. I'm gonna let my mane out a bit, you know, before I discuss the DRT. Super important. Just get a little bit of quantum out, and gonna go all the way up to the top. Now we're gonna get drilling here. Anybody wants to get, this is my second home. I love coming here, and you know, gonna go on those toes, and gotta get it for the left, for the right, and that's how we got here. Anybody wants to finance that I go up and down here, always when I come here, I always get a little bit of joy, and super nice, and I get a little bit of that good forest, my mistress, the mountain. In the darkness we go. Then we come back up, and we go to the top, and we go hydrate, and I guess I got the hydration already in the backpack, but that's something what we gotta do. So yeah, my mistress, to the top and back, to the top of the mountain and back to my headquarters, in and out. Monday, like to begin the week by coming to my second home, not just mine, the Imperial headquarters, Mount Royal, and back. And yeah, temperature dropped a bit, let my mane out, and now I'm about to get ready to discuss that DRT. Super important, you know, that I discuss the DRT, debt fusion theory, as we move, as we drill, and as we're gonna get back to that cadence. But we have to do a little bit of that French, because we here made the great linguistic compromise of the French language, you know, as I call for the maintaining of peace, and going back to my prediction, of course, 2019, in 2019, in October, November, when I predicted, of course, that there's going to be an international conflagration, predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration, that is always something situational, which, of course, have to do and have to operate. But of course, my prediction was, of course, that we had, of course, the prediction that there was going to be an international conflagration based on several layers of analysis, one of which, of course, the most important was that due to the fact that those nation states, civilizational complexes, were not able to fully resolve their conflicts, due to these conflicts that are continuing, that of course they're gonna those conflicts, basically my prediction was that due to conflicts which were not resolved from the 20th century, these conflicts are gonna re-begin, recommence, and re-emerge in the 21st century. And this is what has been happening in the past 3.5 years, and I guess it's gonna be February 2022, 3.5 years since Russia invaded Ukraine and the consequential conflicts which have unfolded now. Of course, they're all dating from the Cold War, which lasted, of course, about 45 years, between 1947, March, but some people say 46. Well, some people say 45. I say 44 years and 9 months, almost 45 years. I put the timeline of this Cold War between 1947 March, and of course April 1990, March 1947, and of course December 1991. That's what it is. So between, of course, that time and that specific time, it's something which we have to do in the Concordiate, of course, where we are to appellate our internal constellations and all the things where we are today. That is basically what has been happening. These conflicts from the Cold War did not find their full resolution and expressions, of course. So they did not find their full resolutions and expressions, So that is what it is with that, and that's where we're gonna go drilling on the go, and that is where we're gonna go now in the darkness. And in the darkness there's some light, and it is, of course, the DRT which we have to do, and that is something which we gotta appellate. So of course the DRT, that refusion theory, that's all we have to do. Now the DRT, the retrofusion theory, is something which we have, of course, to consummate and appellate. So basically, we're gonna, of course, implement the DRT, the retrofusion theory. We have to. And once again, what was my conclusion back in 2019? October was that we are heading towards an international conflagration, and you see all these conflicts are from that period about, which the Cold War lasted 44 years and 9 months, almost 45 years, right? Between about March 1947 and end of December 1991 with the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Russia-Ukraine is an unresolved conflict dating from that period. Hamas, Israel, Palestine. Hamas is an organization which was founded in the 80s during the Cold War. They were founded in the 80s, Hamas. So the most part also of India, Pakistan, they're all both nuclear armed powers. Let's be understood, they are nuclear armed powers. Pakistan and India, they date from the Cold War. They did not resolve their conflicts. And China and Taiwan is known officially as the ROC, Republic of China. Their conflicts dates back, of course, to their establishment of the People's Republic of China, mainland China, by Mao Zedong in October 1949, where the nationalists were pushed on the island, right? And they formed their so that's an unresolved conflict which can start any minute. China might, mainland China, also known as People's Republic of China, might invade Taiwan tonight I might go back and breaking news: China attacks, invades Taiwan. They stated that their official position is that Taiwan is an unrecognized. It's a province. It's a province. It's a territory of China. That's their main position. The political position, geopolitical position. It's as much as I know the conflicts, the ideologies. I am a North American, so my propositions, initiatives are for the North American collective. Fundamentally, are for the North American collective. That is something which, of course, we have to appellate, and we have, of course, to get it on the go as we are for here and left, and that is something which we gotta get that drill, So that is something which we gotta appellate. So we got a constitution of the Republic, Imperial Republic, which has to be public-private partnership based, and for the 21st century, and for the rehabilitation of our massive millions and millions and millions of our fellow brothers and sisters, Canadians and brothers and sisters in the USA, and all who come to join us who need rehabilitation and lots of healing. We are in a crisis, we're in a crisis, and it's a more centrist approach, solutions, and sometimes practical, sometimes psychological, sometimes financial. It takes a combination. I don't have them all, but paradoxically I do have the DRT, which now fully just focus on the DRT, standing for the D, debt, R, refusion, T theory, the debt refusion theory, which I'm going to explain now. The DRT, debt refusion theory, integrates in it monetary integration theory. Monetary integration theory is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union by the Europeans in the 90s. So integrated in my DRT theory, integrated in the DRT theory. I hear the owl 4 times. Coo, 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 coo. 4 times the owl. That's it. On the mountain, my mistress, I am. So, of course, the DRT theory, I hear the owl again. That's a good omen for the DRT and our empire. The debt refusion theory. So, it integrates monetary integration theory. MIT monetary integration theory, the DRT, the debt refusion theory, integrates monetary integration theory. Monetary integration theory integrates is integrated in my DRT, the debt refusion theory. The DRT, debt refusion theory, is integrated in the monetary integration theory, is integrated into DRT, debt refusion theory. So, of course, that is, the appellation. Of course, that is something which we have to give. So, the DRT, debt refusion theory, why is it the solution? It's interesting because I'm here on the mountain and I see four different lanes, and it is because we are faced by 4 main problems. Economic, financial problems. Both the United States and Canada citizens, the majority of the citizens, including myself, face these 4 problems at different levels of intensity, in whatever order prescribed. But the majority, of course, we face these problems. Now, whatever the problems are, get to appellate and, of course, integrate and fully materialize and fully concord and fully know that these 4 problems, in whatever order they are now to be appellated, of course, integrated, of course, and insoluted as much as we can. So these 4 problems are, and again, my DRT theory has to be implemented binationally for both Canada and the United States, because, of course, as integral and part of my bipolar geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the world by the fusion of Canada into the Imperial Republican complex of the 63 for total security, service, and defense. And I say the bipolar geopolitical strategy, not to be confused with the psychological condition. It's nothing to do with psychiatry or psychology, but merely bipolar is in the bipolar world order which we're going to create, Canada and the United States. A bipolar world order which we're going to create, Canada and the United States. I guess we're going to be bipolar a little bit because we're going to fuse the North and the South, but not too much, Not too much. We're going to build the North American People's Imperial Coliseum. The Imperial Coliseum, which is going to be the greatest sports arena ever built on the Canadian-US border. And me and Donald Trump are going to inaugurate by having a fighting match on the Canadian-US border. Let's build a start now to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, the Mercedes-Benz Dome, and the Louisiana Arena. That's the same center where my 49ers lost to the Ravens in one of my favorite Super Bowls, aka it's known as, it has several nicknames. It's Super Bowl 47, aka Bro Bowl, aka Harbaugh Bowl, aka Blackout Bowl. It has several nicknames. Super Bowl 47. Super Bowl 47 is one of my favorites, top 5, and that's where many Super Bowls were played and fought, and of course battled out. And that's what we're going to build on the Canadian-US border, the biggest ever sports arena complex Coliseum ever built. That's going to be 11 times bigger than the Louisiana Superdome, which changed names several times, just like I changed names in the process of changing the name, but of course now is known as the Louisiana, now is known as the Caesar Superdome. Before that, it was known as the Mercedes-Benz. So of course that is something what it is, and that's something which we have to appellate, and we have to of course conjugate in all the styles which we are, of course, to protrudent in all our well-being and our wellness in all our civilizational complex where we are as the domain, and we have of course to be in all the plurality of course of all the beings and the domains where we are of course to integrate and appellate all the naturalness that we have to also build. I will to build a parallel to this biggest ever complex Coliseum, the Forgotten Goddess Temple. Forgotten Goddess Temple, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, of course, to be 11 times bigger than the 11 times bigger than the, here in Montreal we got the oratory. So because I credit my surviving to the COVID, being attacked by surprise, depression, and all that, I survived to the goddess, and I will to build a Forgotten Goddess. She doesn't need my temples because I'm a speck of dust, piece of nobody, but she doesn't need my temples. She's got the pyramids, but nonetheless I will to build the Forgotten Goddess, G-O-D-D-E-S-S, Goddess Temple, to be 11 times bigger than the oratory and the Coliseum and the House of the Dragon. Pyramid, scarlet, crimson. Those are shades of red, scarlet and crimson. The pyramid shades of red, and the Rainbow People's Palace, Rainbow People's Palace, to be of course for my fellow neurodivergents, neurotypicals. And we got a little light there, somebody going with the light here in the forest on the mountain. So those are the 4 buildings which we're going to build together, and we're going to implement my DRT because we have to. So the DRT, now explain the DRT, debt refusion theory. We have 4 main problems which are pressing us dearly, and because we have those 4 problems which are pressing us dearly, we have to implement of course the DRT. The 4 problems are the growing cost of living, the growing cost of living. That is the growing cost of living. The prices of goods are increasing, even consumer goods, durable goods. Cost of cheese, bacon, bread, lettuce, romaine lettuce, another orange juice. The cost of many goods which are nutrients and everyday goods are increasing. Eggs as well, eggs, right? So growing cost of living by the cost of goods going up. Cost of rent is also going up. My rent also went up, but I cannot complain. I'm going to say that my rent has went up between 6 and 10. So I can't really complain for my rent going up. I'm just going to say that it is between $6 and $10. $6 and $10. So I cannot complain for my rent going up. $6 and $10 for my rent going up is between $6 and $10. So it's, for me, I find it's fair. I cannot complain, so I'm not gonna complain. But those 4 problems are affecting many citizens of both Canada, United States. Many in both Canada and United States. That's why I have to implement the DRT, Canada and United States binationally. Growing cost of rent, growing cost of living, the stagnation of the salaries, and the growing cost of debt. Even now, somebody swiping that credit card, getting even more debt. Swiping that credit card, getting even more debt. More credit card debt. Record credit card debt for both Canadians and United States is on the menu for the past 4 years. Record credit card debts. We got the record credit card debts. So that is one other issue. The record credit card debt. So those 4, in whatever order you place them, 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 whatever. In whatever order you place them, in whatever order you place them. That's what it is with that. So whatever order you place these 4 are of course the pressing problems, which of course they have of course to get implemented in of course the dynamics where we have of course to implement in all the dynamics where we are of course to be resolute and of course to consecrate and of course appellate the jurisprudence and of course all the situational positions where we are for all those victims, where we are of course in the consequential ability of all the situation where we have now of course to proceed to moving in the further advancements towards the naturalness of implementing of course the DRT, that refusion theory, the DRT, for the creation of the UE. So now I'm going to explain it. So again, keep in mind that my DRT integrates monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt, all the public and the private debt, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, all the public and the private debt, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. My $10,000, your $10,000, their $10,000. All the public and the private debt, we're of course going to create it and integrate it with the public private debt. We're going to add it together with the public private debt of the United States, because the public private debt of the United States has of course to be together in the complementary of course where we are situationally, and that's how we have to get doing like that. So of course all the public and the private debt, we're gonna of course complement it integrally of course where we are to the prudent of course to be in order to conquer mittens sides of all our capabilities of course to get it on the go, and of course you'll be passing on the tunnel, in the tunnel where the darkness is. Gotta get it for the left or right, and the DRT, the debt fusion theory, we're of course gonna get the implementation of course of the debt fusion theory of course to get the appellation of course of the debt fusion theory of course to get it on the go, and to get it of course on the appellation of the go now for the DRT, the debt fusion theory of course to get it on the go, to get it on now the debt fusion theory. DRT, debt fusion theory, integrates monetary integration theory. We're going to create a new currency and a new central bank, the Imperial central bank, by implementing it. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt, my 10,000, your 10,000, their 10,000, whatever the name may be, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, my 10,000, yours, added with the United States. All that money is going to be plus the money in circulation. We're going to create a new currency called the UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. The universal exchange unit. The UE, the UE, the UE. The universal exchange unit, the UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. Universal exchange unit, the UE. The UE, the universal. The universal exchange unit. The universal exchange unit. The UE, the UE, the UE. Attends, et pas avec le blocage. So here we are at the Rock&Roll, and that's how we're gonna get drilling like that. We're gonna get drilling on that go, hydrate, and let's go on the toes, and we're gonna create the UE, U dot, universal U dot exchange. So all the debt, I'm gonna let her run a little bit of that, and that's what we're gonna get doing. We're gonna create the UE, the universal exchange. We're gonna take all the public and the private debt, add it all together. We're gonna create, of course, the universal exchange. We're gonna create, of course, the UE, the universal exchange. And of course, we're gonna get it on the drill, of course, to create the universal exchange unit. All the public private debt is gonna be, of course, in the creation of the UE, U dot universal U dot exchange U dot unit. We're gonna put an interest rate level of 10%. It's gonna be building all the supercomputers. We're gonna create this new Imperial bank for the central bank, of course, for Canada, United States joint. We're gonna get rid of the border, create a census and a common census, of course, create a North American collective census for the 63 coast to coast all public and private partnership. Of course, we're gonna be mobilizing, of course, to do them, of course, to integrate, and of course, to appellate them on the conjugation, of course, on the go. And of course, that is what we're gonna have to do. The UE, U dot universal, U dot exchange, U dot UE, the universal exchange. We're gonna have to get doing on that drill. Here we're gonna get doing on the left and on the right and in the middle and in the center, of course, of all the propositions where we have, of course, to implement and appellate, of course, the conjugation and of course the creation of the UE, the universal exchange, and the U dot universal, U dot exchange, U dot UE. Of course, it is the appellation of the UE, the universal exchange. We're gonna get a little bit of that creation of put a 10% interest rate, of course, on that go, 10% interest, and we're gonna get doing on the universal exchange. It is something which we're gonna have to do it now because it's an emergency. We got the 4 problems which are pressing us. I'm gonna HYDRAT, gonna switch a little bit of that French. So all the private debt, we're gonna take it, of course, all to get together. We're gonna convert it into US dollars, add it with the US dollar. We're gonna create the that money is gonna be the new credit, the new currency, and all the money in circulation. We're gonna create it, of course, to have the value of the US dollar, U dot universal, U dot exchange, U dot unit, the universal exchange. We're gonna have, of course, the creation of the universal exchange, and we're gonna get getting on the drill with that, and that's how we have to get doing on that, and that's how we gotta get drilling on that, you know, to create the UE, of course. Create the UE, of course, to get rid of them, of course. That's why we're gonna have to get doing the universal exchange unit, the universal exchange unit. That's how we're gonna have to get doing for the creation of the UE. 4 problems which are pressing us: growing cost of rents, growing cost of food, credit card debt, and of course the stagnation of the salaries. Those 4 are super hardcore. Oh yeah, I hydrated. I gotta get a little bit of good hydration now. All ready to go. That's what we gotta get doing on that, and we gotta get doing on that Rock&Roll, you know, to get drilling on. It's alright, we gotta get doing on that. I'm still on that one.
peau.
That's what it is, and that's what I gotta do, you know, the DRT. I'm gonna go back into the darkness in a bit. But that's what it is, and that's what we have to do, you know. D'être refusion TV. Here's Jolly. French, que c'est la belle province. Bienvenue, bien sûr. On est là, je vais voir. C'est un raton, j'encourage à faire l'entraînement physique. L'entraînement physique, selon ma médecine, est thérapie de choix, bien sûr. C'est un entraînement ici que je vis, puis je vais bien sûr pour la faire, bien sûr, dans cette position d'entraînement physique, que je suis sur la montagne. Et je vous encourage à faire de l'entraînement physique pour en faire, bien sûr, pour la faire, bien sûr, de façon assis sur la montagne. C'est quelque chose que je vous encourage aux Québécois et Québécoises. J'ai fait le transfert de la solution, mais c'est quelque chose que, bien sûr, on doit faire ensemble. Puis, je vous encourage le plus possible à faire de l'entraînement physique par écart, bien sûr. C'est quelque chose que moi, je le fais au quotidien. Vous savez que c'est quelque chose que j'adore venir ici à la montagne. Donc, je vous encourage toujours à prendre un peu de temps pour aller dehors, peut-être dans une forêt comme celle-là. La forêt, ma maîtresse, c'est le Mont-Royal. Mon sol, je ne filais pas exactement à 100%, mais quand je suis maintenant, je me sens vraiment, vraiment, vraiment mieux. Juste sortir dehors, puis juste prendre de l'air un peu. C'est quelque chose, bien sûr, que ça en fait du bien, tu sais. Ça en fait vraiment du bien, puis c'est quelque chose que moi-même, tu sais, j'en fais au quotidien depuis j'ai sorti de ma dépression. J'étais en dépression suicidaire avant 2017, bien sûr. Avant 2017, bien sûr, j'ai fait bien sûr une conflagration, bien sûr, pour être dans ce point de convergence, pour être dans ce point d'avoir, bien sûr, que j'étais en dépression, puis suicidaire, puis en 2017, je célèbre aujourd'hui, ces semaines, jusqu'au septembre, je célèbre, bien sûr, 8 ans depuis que j'ai sorti de ma dépression, bien sûr, pour le faire, bien sûr, sorti de quand j'ai vécu des temps difficiles, puis même maintenant, mon seul stress vraiment est financier, bien sûr. Fait que du point de vue financier, là, du point de vue de mes finances, ça va pas bien. C'est sûr que du point de vue financier, ça va pas bien. Mais à part ça, c'est sûr que je suis de bonne humeur, je suis quelqu'un de jovial. J'ai une condition de neurodivergence appelée l'Asperger's. Donc, des fois, la manière que je communique, c'est un peu difficile. Peut-être un peu étrange, bizarre, mais c'est à cause de cette... C'est pas une maladie, hein. S'il vous plaît, j'entends souvent, c'est trop souvent dire les gens, bien sûr, qui disent souvent, bien sûr, que c'est une maladie, bien sûr, puis c'est bien sûr, c'est maladie, bien sûr, que ça fasse, bien sûr, que c'est maladie, bien sûr, pour le faire, bien sûr, dans cette maladie, bien sûr, vivre dans ce point de constance que je suis moi-même ici, bien sûr, dans ce point, bien sûr, pour le vivre aujourd'hui, bien sûr, que c'est pas une maladie. C'est là qu'il faut qu'on commence la discussion, parce que cette discussion qu'on va avoir vis-à-vis de l'Asperger, un peu superficielle, c'est sûr, un peu depuis une couple de minutes, là, parce que je veux passer à d'autres choses, mais vous sachiez que c'est une condition de neurodivergence à cause de ces mutations du cerveau au niveau microscopique, bien sûr. C'est des niveaux microscopiques, hein? C'est pas des grosses mutations, bien sûr que c'est pas visible sur le cerveau, hein? C'est pas visible sur l'écran, c'est à l'intérieur, c'est des petites mutations qui existent vis-à-vis. Puis la cause, c'est peut-être héréditaire, ça veut dire génétique, biologique, les gènes, ou c'est l'environnement. La cause n'est pas connue à 100%. Donc, la cause de l'Asperger n'est pas connue. Puis moi-même, je n'ai pas de diagnostic officiel, mais on m'avait diagnostiqué indépendant certains citoyennes qui me disaient, bien sûr, qui m'ont dit à travers les âges, là, plus que 7, 8, 9 ans, là, qui ont de l'expérience dans le système de santé aussi, dans le travail de la santé, puis ils me l'ont dit. Hein, puis je n'ai pas voulu l'accepter pendant bien des années. Hein, ça m'a pris bien des années l'intégrer puis à travailler dessus parce que c'est sûr que c'est encore un stigme. C'est sûr qu'il y a encore bien du travail à faire, mais dans le 21e siècle, il y a beaucoup de travail qui a été fait vis-à-vis l'Asperger, aussi connu comme l'autisme hautement fonctionnel. Puis c'est sûr qu'on a de la difficulté dans la communication, compréhension sociale, des choses, bien sûr. Il faut nous le dire, bien sûr, souvent dans la face, bien sûr, mais il faut nous le dire, bien sûr, dans la face, bien sûr. Des fois, on est quand même direct, nous aussi, la manière qu'on s'exprime dans certaines choses, pas parce qu'on veut offenser, c'est juste la manière que notre cerveau, bien sûr, procède les informations avec lesquelles on travaille, que ce soit certaines informations, mais on a quand même nos forces, même si on a des déficiences dans certaines choses, on a quand même des forces qui nous font que dans certaines choses, on peut être très bon vis-à-vis de certaines choses. Mais, puis c'est ça, moi, nous les Aspergers, on a des routines, comme des routines rituelles, hein. Puis des routines rituelles, bien sûr, ces routines rituelles font bien sûr que ces routines rituelles font dans le fond qu'on y aille puis on se donne, bien sûr, avec intensité, avec super concentration, bien sûr, avec intensité, super concentration. On est super dedans, super concentré, super intense quand on pratique, quand on fait, bien sûr, quand on étudie, quand on travaille ou quand on s'engage dans ce qu'on appelle les intérêts spéciaux. Et ces intérêts spéciaux, connus comme intérêts obsessifs, préoccupent la plupart de notre temps. J'adore la pyramide. Ça, c'est la pyramide qui est là. Le Montréal, la montagne que je vois, l'île à Montréal, avec les gratte-ciels, le travail puis plein de lumière. C'est grâce au travail de Québec, du passé et du présent, puis bientôt dans le futur, il y a plus de gratte-ciel, bien plus de centrales, bien plus de lumière, puis des joies, puis de la danse de Rock&Roll, puis j'en fasse un dragon arc-en-ciel. Ah ouais, puis mon intérêt, c'est mes intérêts, la trinité de mes intérêts spéciaux, c'est la géopolitique, l'entraînement physique et la danse. Puis dans ces trois choses-là, mais c'est là que ça se passe. La plupart de mon quotidien se tourne autour de l'engagement dans la géopolitique aussi. Je suis un analyste théoricien en géopolitique indépendant, penseur et stratège. Je développe, je fais la création des stratégies depuis bien des années de la géopolitique, bien sûr. Puis bien sûr, je dois le dire, que je prends beaucoup de fierté dans ce travail indépendant d'analyse, de philosophie, puis bien sûr de développement des théories et stratégies dans la défense, surtout pour la défense de la géopolitique, puis l'avancement. Puis j'ai prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant en 2019, en octobre. Je dois le dire souvent, mais je le dis parce que ça fait partie de mon travail intégral, que j'ai prévu en octobre 2019 qu'il y aura une conflagration internationale. Il y aura une conflagration internationale. J'ai la preuve, j'ai la vidéo en ligne, puis bien sûr, j'avais prévu qu'il y aura une conflagration internationale en 2019. Pour celle-là, j'ai la preuve, hein. J'ai prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant. Puis là, je vais pas garder trop de temps ici, je vais me retourner vers en arrière. Je venais juste voir la pyramide, fait que je vais juste retourner, puis on va retourner vers chez nous parce que je commence à avoir faim un peu. Bon, fait que je suis venu sur la montagne, je me fais plaisir parce que là, ça sent mieux. Je sais pas que je suis plus en dépression, je suis plus suicidaire, ça fait longtemps. C'est juste que ça faisait quand même longtemps, tu sais, que... Ça fait longtemps que je suis plus en dépression. Hein. Ça touche beaucoup les N.A.C.P, par exemple. On a trois problèmes, généralement, là, les Aspergers. Les trois problèmes qu'on rencontre le plus, c'est bien sûr que le manque d'amis. Puis c'est pour ça que j'ai une solution. Hein. Je ne veux pas perdre votre temps, peut-être pas le mien. Hein. Ben, les amis avec bénéfice seulement pour moi maintenant. Puis je fais partie aussi, pas juste de la communauté de neurodivergents, je suis aussi androgyne pansexuel. Ça fait des années, c'est pas quelque chose que je me cache, hein, messieurs, madame. Androgyne pansexuel, ben c'est ça que je suis messieurs, je suis madame. Fait que c'est 50-50 avec moi à cause de mes réincarnations. Hein. Une fois, j'étais né femme ici entre 1688 et 1735 dans mes réincarnations. Hein. Dans mes réincarnations passées, des réincarnations passées, dans les réincarnations passées, présentes de l'Empire romain, l'Ancienne Égypte, femme, homme, oui, bien sûr, servante, prêtresse des légions des Roms, puis homme, j'étais né homme ici, j'ai rencontré Louis XVI, j'ai servi dans ce PVM, puis dans GRC, avant que ça s'appelle la GRC, puis j'étais fermier, j'étais banquier, j'étais plusieurs choses, servante, homme-femme, fait que maintenant, mais ça reste que en 2025, je suis androgyne, je pense que je balance dans mes renaissances, incarnation de homme-femme jusqu'à maintenant. Et bon, Je suis pansexuel, fait que vous avez 18 ans et plus, par exemple, je vais vous carter. Hein. Ça n'y pas avec ça. Je vous carte comme si vous êtes... si vous allez pour acheter des cigarettes ou de l'alcool ou dans un club, là, des choses de même, je vais procéder de la même manière en vous demandant les cartes. En vous demandant les cartes. En vous demandant vos cartes. C'est quelque chose... Bien sûr qu'on a des... Puis j'ai eu mes luttes, j'ai mes cicatrices, j'ai survécu la COVID aussi. Maintenant, mon seul stress, c'est financier, mais bien sûr, je veux vous parler de la géopolitique, c'est super important, puis surtout de la TRD. Fait que je retourne dans qu'est-ce que je suis bon, la géopolitique et le rock&roll. Fait qu'en 2019, j'ai prévu, qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant, j'ai prévu en 2019. J'ai prévu en 2019 qu'il y aura, bien sûr, une conflagration internationale, tu sais. Une conflagration internationale, tu sais. Je l'ai prévu en 2019 qu'il y aura une conflagration internationale. Fait que, ayant prévu celle-là, mais c'est sûr que, ayant prévu qu'il y aura une conflagration internationale, bien sûr, c'est une chose, bien sûr, que je l'ai faite moi-même. Fait que j'ai prévu cette conflagration internationale en 2019, en octobre. D'une manière générale, c'est ça qui se passe maintenant, si vous voyez à travers le monde. C'est bien sûr parallèle. Un paradoxe aussi à ce qui se passe. Par exemple, par contre, je dois être honnête et dire que qu'est-ce que j'ai pas prévu, là, c'est la détérioration des relations avec les États-Unis. Ça, j'ai pas prévu, par exemple, par contre. Qu'il y aura une détérioration avec les États-Unis, j'ai pas prévu ça. Ça, c'est quand même nouveau pour moi aussi. Fait qu'il faut prendre en considération là, que nous, là, en tant que Québécois, Canadiens, Québécois, puis c'est réciproque pour les États-Unis, hein, quand ça vient de la politique externe, nous, il faut qu'on se dirige nos forces politiques pour avoir les meilleures relations réciproques avec les États-Unis, puis les États-Unis envers nous. En première place, comme priorité, je parle. Ça, c'est constamment la même chose, c'est une constance, ça. C'est comme le chiffre, comme le symbole pi qui représente toujours un chiffre, c'est une constance relationnelle du cercle du diamètre. Fait que c'est la même chose dans ce point de vue de la géopolitique que nous, là, veut pas que la détérioration des relations avec les États-Unis commence, il dégénère. Nous, il faut qu'on travaille pour avoir les meilleures relations avec les États-Unis. Ça, il n'y a pas de non, il n'y a pas de peut-être. Ça, c'est constamment la même chose. On ne peut pas dire non, on ne peut pas dire oui ou peut-être à ça. Ça, il faut que vous l'affirmez dans le positif. Vous comprenez? Quand ça vient de nos relations avec les États-Unis, c'est constamment ça. On ne peut pas nier ça, on ne peut pas dire non à ça. Ça, il faut que vous le dites dans le positif. Ça, on ne peut pas le dire dans le négatif, ça. Vous comprenez qu'est-ce que je dis? Fait que nous, que ce soit de la gauche, de la droite, du centre, même qu'est-ce qui arrive maintenant, là, puis ça m'inquiète. Hein? J'ai les frissons parce que depuis le 1er août, là, on est désigné comme un Canada. J'ai jamais vu ça, j'ai jamais entendu ça. Là. C'est nouveau. On est désigné comme une menace hors commun et extraordinaire. On est désigné comme une menace hors commun et extraordinaire. Hein? Comme une menace hors commun et extraordinaire. Vous imaginez-vous, hors commun, extraordinaire. Hors commun, extraordinaire. On est désigné comme une menace. Hors commun, extraordinaire. C'est dans ce point de vue-là. On n'a jamais été désigné de même, là. Une menace. Le Canada, hors commun, uncommon et extraordinaire et extraordinaire. Puis il nous reproche du fentanyl qui aurait pu tuer 16 millions d'Américains. C'est sur le site officiel, hein, le 1er août. Là. Ça fait 19 jours. Ça, c'était la justification pourquoi ils ont augmenté les tarifs sur nous. Puis ça, j'ai pas prévu qu'il y aurait une détérioration de même. Il faut qu'on règle ça en compte. Puis là, tu sais, ils disent qu'on est désigné le Canada. Ça fait peur un peu. Hein. Je m'inquiète un peu. Parce que si on est désigné comme un de hors commun, là, extraordinaire, une menace. Puis c'est vrai que la GRC, ça faisait la police fédérale, là. GRC, ça faisait des années qu'ils nous ont avertis, hein, qu'il y a des groupes transnationaux qui s'incrustent, qui s'intègrent, qui prennent de plus en plus de place domestique au Canada, des groupes criminels, des syndicats criminels organisés transnationaux qui proviennent d'ailleurs. Ça fait des années qu'ils nous reprochent. Puis là, les États-Unis, ils mettent des tarifs, puis ils nous reprochent qu'on n'a pas fait de la coordination de nos forces de sécurité, nos forces sécurité avec les forces de sécurité, bien sûr, puis qui disent que cette année, ça a triplé, c'est plus que le triple de fentanyl qui a passé, qui aurait pu tuer 16 millions d'Américains. Donc c'est pour ça qu'on constitue une menace extraordinaire et hors commun pour le peuple américain. Ça me donne les frissons, nous, du Canada. Là. Vous imaginez où qu'on est rendu, là? C'est sérieux, c'est grave. Puis l'année passée, le 25 octobre 2024, la GRC, ils ont saisi le plus grand laboratoire du Canada dans l'histoire du Canada. Ils ont la preuve, ils ont saisi le plus grand laboratoire en 2000, l'année passée. Là, ils ont saisi le plus grand laboratoire au Canada. Ça n'a jamais été si grand de même. Ils ont saisi le plus grand laboratoire de fentanyl et d'autres drogues. Puis bien sûr, les pilules, les capsules, les doses de fentanyl qu'ils ont saisi, c'était 95 millions. Le plus grand laboratoire, ça aurait pu tuer la population canadienne 2 fois. Il dit, c'est dans le site officiel de la GRC, à Surrey, à Colombie-Britannique. Fait qu'il y a quelque chose de vérité dans qu'est-ce que ça dit, qu'on est devenu, il y a une production domestique qui augmente au Canada, des groupes transnationaux criminels. Puis ça, c'est prouvé par notre propre police fédérale, la GRC. Fait qu'il y a quand même une vérité à ça. Vous comprenez? Il y a quand même quelque chose de véridique dans ça. Il y a quand même quelque chose de véridique dans ça. Il y a quand même quelque chose de véridique. Fait que dans cette vérité, fait qu'il y a quand même quelque chose de véridique dans ça, de la vérité qui s'y trouve. Puis ça, c'est de la vérité, c'est que il y a de plus en plus de groupes criminels transnationaux. Puis il y a de plus en plus de production de fentanyl au Canada. C'est prouvé par la GRC. La GRC, bien sûr, ils ont attrapé, là, ils ont saisi, là, ce laboratoire l'année passée, le 25 octobre. Ça fait même pas un an, 2024, à Surrey, en Colombie-Britannique. Fait que ce laboratoire, c'était un super laboratoire. Fait que dans le 1er août, la déclaration officielle de la Maison-Blanche, c'est écrit en noir et blanc, vous pouvez aller voir vous-même sur le site officiel de la Maison-Blanche. C'est là que ça dit. C'est là que ça dit en noir et blanc. Et bien sûr, ça dit bien sûr en noir et blanc, dans ce dictum, bien sûr, ça dit que, bien sûr, ça fait qu'on a plus de production de fentanyl à l'interne. À l'interne, on a plus de production de fentanyl à l'interne. Et cette production, ça augmente. Et fait qu'il y a quelque chose qui est là. On s'est fait avertir il y a bien des années de la GRC. Là. Puis juste l'année passée, imaginez-vous, là, ils ont saisi 95 millions de doses. Ça aurait pu tuer là, 2 fois la population canadienne. Pensez-y à ça. Là. Puis moi, de plus en plus, je déclare cette fentanyl. C'est pas une drogue, ça. Ça a l'air, ça a l'air plus comme une arme biologique pour moi, sérieusement. Là. Parce que je dis, ben, mettons que, tu sais, quelqu'un qui vend de la drogue, tu sais, il veut qu'il continue à vendre à son client, tu sais. Il veut pas que son client meure, mais s'il y a tellement de surdoses, puis tellement de morts, puis tellement de la fentanyl, on dirait que c'est plus une bombe. C'est pas une bombe, mais on dirait que c'est plus une arme biologique, me semble. Hein? Moi, c'est de plus en plus ça, là. Ça n'a pas l'air comme ça. Tu sais, je veux dire, ça a l'air un peu... À moins que c'est... Qu'est-ce qu'ils mettent, comment ils font le processus, puis c'est fait pour être une arme biologique à la place. Puis on se demande pourquoi que c'est en Amérique du Nord tellement ce fentanyl que ailleurs il semble ne pas y avoir tellement de... Me semble, je sais pas, mais qu'est-ce que je sais, c'est l'Amérique du Nord, hein, parce que je suis nord-américain, Canadien québécois, c'est chez nous. Hein. Personnellement, je ne me considère pas un membre d'une diaspora, mais ici chez nous, dans une vie, dans une autre vie, j'ai une spiritualité un peu jeunesse, Rock&Roll, puis j'ai l'Asperger's, mais mes solutions, il faut les implémenter. Puis là, je vais vous parler de la TRD. Super important que je vous parle de la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette. Parce qu'on est rendu à voir 4 problèmes économiques majeurs du point de vue des finances. On a 4 problèmes majeurs qui nous touchent le plus au Québec, au Canada, aux États-Unis, au Canada, aux États-Unis. C'est 4 problèmes. Dans quel ordre que vous voulez les mettre, là? C'est sûr que vous voulez les mettre là, dans un autre ordre, mais quand même sont celles-ci. L'augmentation du coût de la vie. Les prix augmentent. Hein? Ben des produits, des biens augmentent. À tous les jours, à chaque semaine, je vois des augmentations des prix du beurre, du pain, des œufs, des saucisses, du fromage et plein de produits qu'on consomme. L'alimentation augmente. Le coût de loyer, mon loyer a augmenté aussi. Là, 2 mois cette année, mais si je veux pas dire exactement par combien, je veux juste dire que c'est entre 6 $ et 10 $ par mois mensuel. Fait que je peux pas me plaindre dans mon cas. Je veux pas me plaindre dans mon cas parce que c'est quand même, c'est pas si gros en pourcentage, tu sais. Fait que je dois dire que je vais pas me plaindre, c'est justifié, je vais dire, dans mon cas. Même si je vous dis pas exactement c'est combien, je veux juste vous dire que c'est entre 6 minimum et 10. Fait que ça peut être entre, ou ça peut être 6, ou ça peut être 10 en tant que tel. Augmentation dans mon loyer mensuel. Mais les autres loyers augmentent aussi. L'augmentation des loyers, la stagnation des salaires. Justement, aujourd'hui, on se retrouve avec un problème chez Air Canada. Le gros problème chez Air Canada, tu sais, il y a un gros problème majeur chez Air Canada. On voit qu'il y a un gros problème. Il y a un problème majeur chez Air Canada. On voit qu'il y a un gros problème chez Air Canada. On voit qu'il y a un gros problème. On voit qu'il y a eu avec ce qui se passe, c'est sûr que ça continue de même, puis ça s'empire. C'est ça que ça s'empire. On dirait la situation s'empire. On dirait que ça. Tu sais, il n'y a pas de. Pour la majorité des gens, pas pour tous, là. C'est sûr qu'il y a bien des gens qui sont bien, que ça leur touche pas, tu sais. Moi, mon seul stress maintenant, là, est financier, tu sais. Fait que c'est de ce point de vue que je vous mets sur la table, bien sûr, que je vous mets sur la table, bien sûr, la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, qui est la solution, ou quelque chose qui ressemble, je dis toujours la seule solution, mais c'est sûr que si quelque chose qui ressemble en principe, ma TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, c'est sûr qu'il peut y en avoir un autre. Je vois une lumière, il y a un concitoyen qui est parti un peu à faire du ball jogging. Ça, c'est toujours bon pour être de côté un peu. Je dois amener ma lumière aussi pour les voir, mais c'est sûr que ça fait une bonne lumière. Mais go for it, bravo. Je félicite. J'adore ça, voir les gens, même dans la nuit. Ici, pour l'être, bien sûr, dans ce point que je dois même, moi-même peut-être, je vais amener mes lumières. Mais moi, j'ai pas vraiment besoin, mais je vois quand même bien, j'ai pas besoin, mais c'est quelque chose qu'il faut quand même qu'on se fasse dans là. Il faut être. C'est bon. Fait que la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, je vous l'explique maintenant. On va, parce qu'on n'a pas le choix à cause de ces 4 problèmes, puis l'augmentation du loyer, le coût de la vie qui augmente, la stagnation du salaire, puis le 4e, mais ça fait dans quelle heure, c'est le coût de la vie. Parallèlement, bien sûr, il y a aussi l'augmentation des cartes de crédit, le surendettement. Le surendettement, oh, il y a une branche ici qui est tombée. Le surendettement. Fait que ces 4 problèmes-là, dans quelle ordre, on n'a pas le choix, on va faire l'implémentation de la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette. La TRD, donc on va prendre toute la dette publique-privée, mon 10 000, son 10 000, son 10 000, ton 10 000, toute la dette publique-privée, mon 10 000, ton 10 000, ton 10 000, mon 10 000, ton 10 000, son 10 000, et bien sûr, mon 10 000, ton 10 000, son 10 000, et bien sûr ici, on va prendre ma dette, ta dette. Je vous l'explique maintenant la TRD, puis sachez que dans ma TRD est inclus la théorie d'intégration monétaire. Fait qu'on va prendre toute la dette publique-privée, mon 10 000. On va prendre toute la dette publique-privée, mon 10 000, ton 10 000 de côte à côte. On va faire la conversion de toute la dette publique privée dans la dette des États-Unis. Toute la dette publique privée. On va faire la conversion dans la dette des États-Unis. Il faut qu'on fasse l'implémentation binationale avec les États-Unis parce que ça contient la théorie d'intégration monétaire, que c'est la théorie, ça c'est la théorie que les Européens y ont faite par la création de la Banque centrale en Europe commune. Fait qu'on va faire la création d'une banque centrale commune en Amérique du Nord. Fait qu'on va prendre toute la dette publique privée. De côte à côte, on va faire l'argent avec la dette publique, l'addition avec la dette publique privée des États-Unis. On va faire la création de l'UI. U point, bon ça c'est un rapport en anglais, c'est pareil. U point unité, un point échange, U point universel. UI, UI, UI. U point unité, un point échange, U point universel. Le UI, UI, UI. U point unité, un point échange universel, UI, UI, UI. U point unité, un point échange, U point universel. L'unité d'échange universelle aura la valeur du dollar des États-Unis. On va mettre un taux d'intérêt de 10%, pas plus. Avec cet argent-là, on va faire la création de la Banque impériale républicaine, la création de l'UI, U point unité, un point échange. U point unité, un point échange, U point universel. L'unité d'échange universelle aura la valeur du dollar des États-Unis. On va mettre un taux d'intérêt de 10%. Le taux d'intérêt de 10%, on va faire bien sûr la construction d'autres centrales d'Hydro-Québec. On va rebâtir l'infrastructure, on va bâtir les 44 tunnels dans le cas d'une guerre thermonucléaire. On va bâtir les 44 tunnels, ces villages dans le cas d'une guerre thermonucléaire. On va bâtir ces villages, ces tunnels-là. On va bien sûr financer les gens à l'entraînement physique, financer les gens au tourisme. On va bien sûr rebâtir, finir avec la frontière, faire un grand recensement, faire la création de deux institutions de partenariat public-privé, soit l'armée du dragon et l'armée de la déesse qui danse pour l'environnement, la ligue de danse intégrée bien sûr, avec la Légion des 63. On va faire le fusionnement impérial républicain du Canada des États-Unis pour les 63 perpétuités impériales, financer les gens au tourisme aussi parce que ça fait du bien pour la santé. Et bien sûr, on va faire bien du bien en commun pour être bien sûr le renouveau, puis bâtir plus de centrales d'Hydro-Québec, rebâtir l'infrastructure du collectif de l'Amérique du Nord, financer les gens au tourisme, parce que moi, ça fait du bien. Je suis sorti de ma dépression. En 2017, je célèbre 8 ans depuis que je suis sorti de ma dépression. Bien sûr, j'ai fait beaucoup de